we can get through that first item fairly rapidly. Why don't we dispense with that, and then that would take away any time pressure from the other item, which is likely to take longer. So, all right, Let's. I will call us into session. Michelle, if you'll call the roll, please.
Sure. Director McLaughlin.
Here.
Director Bernstein.
Present.
Director Crawley.
Present.
Director Jones.
Here.
And Director Solano.
Here. All right, thank you. Please rise and join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, welcome all. Why don't, Harold, I think we'll go with the original order as presented in the agenda. So if Francine's ready to go.
Yeah, Francine's ready to go. We sent you some information over the weekend. Thanks to Stephen for helping us with the template. So we're all trying to use the same RFP template. But in terms of the walkthrough and populating everything, all 4 sections, insurance, this has still been a document in creation, right? So I think we're getting closer to having the standard format done for the Menlo Park Fire District so it can be used. But in the end, what Francine's going to talk about is the elements, and she's an HR professional, what's in here, and then if there's something you want differently, then we need to talk about it before it goes out. So for example, Francine asked me, do we need to put anything for 401A or for management leave? And I said, I don't think so, because we've kind of gone through that and debated it. You as the board decided not to do it. Now, if you feel I'm wrong in that, then, it's probably worthy of a conversation at some point. If not, then, there's 2 pieces of this really. One is the standard compensation research that needs to be done. And that research is, desk items and so forth. That's where AFSCME weighed in and said they wanted their represented employees to be treated the same as the non-represented employees, which we agreed to, and we will do. And then you also have, which I think was a board priority, I know you've said it to me, and we talked about with Chuck a little bit in the agenda setting, which is, do you want the elements of the compensation for the unrepresented, confidential, and chief officers benefits, so to speak, in here so that, we can right that ship or, go back and address those issues. Francine's here to talk about that. And, then that's going to be completely up to you if we want that to be a subpart, a separate part, or not a part at all to this. So I think just having her explain what the true comp class is for, what you can do on that topic, as well as, the general timelines and so forth, is what she can do here next. So if you don't have any questions, I would say let's get Francine on here, who knows what she's talking about.
All right, well, thank you, Francine.
Okay, thank you. Good evening or good afternoon, board. My name again is Francine Hunt. I'm the Human Resources Manager. And today for the item, we would like the board to consider and approve the RFP for a comprehensive classification and compensation study for AFSCME and the unrepped classifications. As the chief mentioned, there's been multiple discussions with the district, with AFSCME regarding this classification study, both through the Human Resources Committee and also during open session as a comment from the AFSCME rep. The desire for AFSCME as we're going into negotiations, again, with this group, is that they want to establish pay equity. They're very interested in getting this compensation study for external as well as internal equity. And the purpose of the classification and compensation study, so classification will study the job description, and it will basically validate the minimum requirements that are needed for each classification, as well as the knowledge, skills, and abilities required to do the position. The importance of this is to, number one, to establish an equitable exam. Without a valid job description, you're not able to conduct an exam based on what is needed for each position. So that is one reason why we want to make sure that all of our job descriptions are up to date and valid. And another reason is that job descriptions, typically evolve as technology and demands and training changes. So should the job description. So that's part of the classification study. It also establishes or ensures compliance with any ADA or the Fair Labor Standards Acts to make sure that we're not basically limiting any certain classification of a person from applying, that we are fair and open, and the minimum qualifications are truly needed for the position. The also job classification will establish the equal pay for equal work to ensure that people that are doing the same or similar jobs are paid equally. And we need a classification plan to make sure that our compensation system is also equitable and fiscally sound. As we bring in new classifications, we not only want to look at individual classifications, but how they relate to other classifications within the entire district. So the objective overall is to have accurate job descriptions that will define and evaluate the duties, responsibilities, and tasks, as well as authority that's required for each of the classification. The compensation study not only will look at internal equity among other classifications within the district, but also external equity. And this is important to make sure that we are competitive in the job market. So what we are going to be asking the vendor to do is to look at agencies that are districts that are comparable to ours in size, and also in the job classifications that we're looking for, job classifications that are very similar. And usually for a purpose of a comp, you want at least a 70% similarity. So at least 70% of the duties and responsibilities should match the position you're studying. And it's also good to get a fair base of basically comparable classifications. So sometimes anything less than 5 wouldn't be considered a good base for comparisons. You want somewhere maybe between 7 to 10 comps if you can get it. Sometimes you'll have to do with 5, but anything less is kind of hard to say whether or not you're above or below market based on only 5 classifications. So that's kind of the purpose of the classification compensation study. And the RFP that was written, as the chief mentioned, is more of a template format that we used, and we are trying to basically mold it to what is required of this study that we're doing. And so we did that in the documents that we shared with you. It goes over the background, which is kind of identifying the district, how many budgeted positions we have, pay grades, salary classifications, as well as the represented units that we want to study, which would be IFF and AFSCME, and then in addition to UNREP. We put together a timeline for the study in hopes that we can issue the RFP out sometime this week, that we would ask for responses due basically about or on or about February 26th if they have any questions for clarification, and proposals due March 3rd. The RFP also goes over just some basic legal language, regarding confidentiality, regarding information if they want to withdraw from the process. And if they want to submit through the RFP process, we basically gave them information that will be needed, which goes over on page number 5, the cover letter, information that will be needed from the cover letter. And then also how we are going to be rating the proposers' qualifications. We rank them in order as well as weight pertaining to what we feel is the most important to have a valid study. And I can go over those in detail if you want the evaluation criteria. Briefly, I know, so the most important thing that we're looking for in this RFP, and this again, I'm sorry if I'm jumping around, but this is on page 9 of the RFP. And one of the things that we're looking for the first thing is basically the service provider's qualifications, their experience, their expertise, methodology, and the quality of similar work that has been provided for other public sector agencies or clients. This one we felt is the most important, 30%. We want a proposer to have a good knowledge of what is required to do this. The classifications that we've identified in the UNREP, AFSCME, as well as the, sorry, not IFF, the UNREP and AFSCME groups is 32 classifications. And so that's kind of a big study. This will take some time. And we want to make sure that the proposer we select has an extensive knowledge in doing classification and compensation work. The next item under the evaluation criteria is understanding this project, our project, including any proposed materials, plans to accomplish the tasks, and a timeline. Like I said, 32 classifications is a big job. The classification compensation has a lot of detailed work to it, but the classification work is quite labor intensive, and it not only involves going out to other agencies to survey and to find comparable job descriptions, but involves having each incumbent fill out a position description questionnaire, which we call a PDQ. After the incumbent completes the PDQ, the proposer will interview each incumbent in that classification, and then will interview their supervisor. And based on the information they receive, comparing it to other like agencies, determine if the qualifications that are listed on the job description or the duties that the incumbent is performing match with the position that they are in. So it's quite a lengthy process. And so we want to make sure that the timeline that the proposer we select is able to work at an efficient kind of level and not take too long for this, even though it is quite a big project. The next item we want to look for is the qualifications of the personnel that they're going to assign to this task. We want to make sure that the proposer has personnel that is also well-versed in class and comp work and can provide quality work. The next item is the price proposal, though this is also very important. I feel that it's, and we felt that it was equally more important for the qualifications than the price, but we will be evaluating the price proposal based on the grand total on our price proposal form that we'll be issuing to our proposers. And then that's weighted 15%. And then the last item is the letter of references for any similar work that they perform for other districts or agencies. And we will take those and review those as well. And that is weighted 10%. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions? I know I kind of went over a lot of information and probably talked faster than I should, but does anyone have any questions on that? Any information regarding the class and comp, the purpose of it, or the RFP?
Chuck?
I have a couple.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of what we're going to get. We can look at various pieces, like we can look at the compensation, we can look at various benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a place where we put it all together and look at the whole package?
Yes, so there is. So basically on the compensation study, we do typically what's called a total comp. So we're not only looking at the compensation that they're earning as like a base salary, but all other benefits that the agency or district is paying for each employee. So that would include any health or cash in lieu, the PERS that they pay for the employee, dental, deferred compensation, any post-retirement medical. We've included that as part of the total comp. If the employer contributes to Social Security, Medicare, those go as part of the total compensation. So we do include all those items to see not only what the base kind of salary range is for any given classification, but also what the total comp picture looks like. Because that, different agencies obviously have different benefits, and that can change depending upon what you're including and what is offered. So we do look at it individually as well as holistically for the whole position for all benefits paid. on
And
behalf.
how is compensation expressed? Is it expressed as a range, like from minimum to maximum? Is it
No,
midpoint?
yes.
What?
Yeah, so usually what my experience is, what we've done for any total comp that we're doing or surveying work is that we take top step. So you're comparing everything equally. If some agencies, like one that I came from, Santa Clara, we built longevity into our salary range, then we're not going to take that into account as a top step. So we just take the top step of a base range. And then we're comparing that against other agencies' top step of the base range. So when our total comp figure comes out, we typically have either, I've seen it both ways, either you annualize it or you have a monthly figure, and that's the total compensation for that classification in a monthly figure. So maybe it would be 25,000 or something like that. But yeah, it's not arranged because we're comparing top step to top step.
And I missed the explanation you just gave about how do you equalize seniority?
So what do you mean by seniority?
Well, whatever you just said about seniority, you said there was a seniority thing and we didn't count that. But
Oh, I'm sorry, longevity.
longevity, sorry.
Yeah. So that's, so yeah, longevity, because that's not part of, typically it's not part of a regular range. That's not counted as the base. But what we do is we add in any incentives. So if a classification gets a longevity pay, we typically, what I've done, and this is something that can be defined when we work with our vendor, is that typically we take someone at 5 years. So at 5 years in an agency, what benefits does that person receive at 5 years? So if they receive longevity, a 2.5% bump, then we would take that. At other agencies, if they get a 5% bump at year 5, we would take that. So that you're comparing everyone the same. But you would identify that at the beginning of the study. What I've always done is 5 years, a 5-year employee.
How would this address one of the problems that, in my opinion, exists is that we under require for the job. So we say, oh, somebody needs, a senior accountant needs to have a high school education, for example. And if they have 2 years of college, they get more money. If they have 4 years of college, they have more money. How do we address those kinds of issues?
So that would be addressed in the job description. So when we do the, not the compensation necessarily, but the classification work to see what is the industry standard for this classification, what is required. I understand what you're asking is kind of underrepresenting the minimum qualifications is important, and it's something that you don't necessarily want to do, just like you don't want to over-represent what's required of a position, because by over-representing, you could have adverse impact and basically have a bias to groups that maybe typically don't have a master's degree or something that you're stating is required, but really is not required. So that would all be done through the class study in determining what is the minimum qualifications for doing this position. And that's something we'll be looking at, is what is the minimum qualifications, what should the FLSA and the EEOC code be for the positions, what should the minimum qualifications be, what are the essential duties that are needed day one when you do a job analysis on a classification to determine. You want to know what all duties are required, but most importantly, you want to know what duties are required day one, because those are the duties that you can actually validly test for. You can't test for a duty that's not expected to be known or needed day one. That would be an invalid examination. So we definitely want to identify what duties are needed day one in this position. And that's something that would be, all that would come through the classification work for each of these classifications.
Okay, thank you. Jim, I have a few more questions, but I'm going to give somebody else a turn.
Okay, thank you, Chet. Anyone else? I'll jump in here. Referring to the staff report, page 1, the background section really describes 2 separate efforts here. The one that you've described, the comp and class study, but then it also addresses the, I'll call it management compensation element. And I would say, there's a couple of things here that I think don't quite capture where we've been and where we were going. It reads that the board of directors indicated a desire. I believe we gave direction that we retain a consultant to evaluate management compensation and in a comprehensive way. So again, referring to the background, it talks about a comprehensive study, but then only makes mention of the 401A plan and the management leave benefits, when the compensation picture is really much larger than that. There are other elements to our management, other components to our management compensation plan. So as I went through this, and specifically the scope of services, I wasn't, that wasn't coming through to me. I think all the comp and class work, I think, kudos. I think, you've really done a great job of putting together an RFP that addresses those needs. But I had difficulty finding, the management compensation function. Could you help me with that?
Okay, I can definitely try. So when I put this together, I tried to pull the information that was discussed about this, and I tried to do as much research as I could to understand exactly what happened and what played out. I didn't put a lot of detail in this section because part of the overall RFP is to do the class and comp work for the unrep classification, which would pull this piece out. But I still wanted to kind of make note that this was an important part of this, even though the whole class comp work will be comprehensive, so it will include everything. I also wanted to just make a special note that within this, either within it or separately, we still need to address that management leave issue. It doesn't necessarily have to be part of the RFP, but because we were doing the RFP, it seems to make sense to have it in there if that's the direction that you would like to go.
Well, there was a specific item on page 20 of the scope of services, number 3. It specifically excludes management leave and the 401A plan.
Yes.
That seemed incongruous to me. If we're doing this management review, and let me back up just a little bit more too. The board gave the direction that we do this study after we took the action on the 401A program. After the challenges were brought forward to us with the cafeteria approach to the health care benefits, and then as they related to 401A, we were presented with a number of challenges there that we couldn't keep doing what we had been doing. So we took the action we did on the 401A program, which I know took money out of some people's pockets. So my recollection is that the board said, we want to examine this. So is there an opportunity to revisit this? Are there other approaches to the management, to the healthcare benefits, the 401A benefits? So I'm not seeing that in this RFP.
Yeah, so I think that that exclusion on the scope that you're reading was because those benefits are not offered currently, that they wouldn't be included in the total comp, but that the intent was not that that would be excluded completely from the study. It's just that they're not going to be added to the total comp for this class study because those benefits are not being offered anymore. But we do need to identify what options and recommendations we can to ensure that we meet all of the requirements that were, I'm sure, set forth before you regarding the FLSA regular rate and the ACA affordability and the bona fide plan, all the issues that were prevalent when we offered those benefits through the flex plan. We need to make sure that our next kind of recommendation is in compliance with all of those things. So the reason it was excluded is that it's not being offered. So we don't want to pad the comp study with that benefit that's no longer offered, but still kind of take into account like what can we offer in replacement of it. So if it is worded confusing, I'm happy to change that so that it is more comprehensive and inclusive.
Yeah.
Rob?
Yeah. The thing that kind of concerns me a little bit is that we've kind of buttonholed what we want to review here under compensation. And since we finally got the verification that we are employees, I'd like a study done or have included a study relative to the compensation for the board. I know we're given $100 a meeting and that type of stuff, but I also know that some of these councils that we serve have different compensation plans, and I'd like some type of a comparison done for us as board members to see where we stand with all these other agencies.
Okay.
Chuck?
I wanted to ask, when we're looking at the benefits and compensation, I thought we wanted to include all of our employees and,
Exactly.
and that would include firefighters also, but they're not in here now. Is that correct?
That is correct. I think I was instructed that it would be the UNREP and the AFSCME. I didn't know that it was to include the IAFF as well.
Yeah, I think because what we're trying to do is get some sort of general equity across all the people, and who they're represented by or not represented by really is immaterial for that. I mean, we don't just say, oh, you're in the union, you get better benefits. Oh, you're in the union, you get worse benefits. But I think what we wanted to do is have some sort of fairness as we looked at this.
Okay.
How many classifications would that add if we were to do that?
So for IAFF, I don't have my class. I am at my desk at home, and so I don't have a class sheet with me, but I'm thinking that it probably wouldn't be more than about 5 more. I'm just ballparking it. I'm still learning the positions at the district, so I think it's about maybe not more than 5, I would think. And then board as well.
Well, I wasn't asking for the board. Rob was, but
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think it would. I mean, it's already a pretty big, large study. I think adding that group wouldn't increase it by too many. Yeah.
I think Stephen had some comments for us.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to point out that compensation of the board, both the per meeting compensation as well as the reimbursement of expenses, is set by the district's enabling legislation by statute. And so comparisons to other agencies may be useful, but you're not going to be able to make decisions on increasing or decreasing your compensation based on what the city of Santa Clara gets, because those are really statutory issues, not matters of what the market will bear and what negotiations are like. So I have no objection to your studying how your compensation compares, but I'm not sure it's going to be information that's going to lead you to decisions.
even just as a clarification though, doesn't the legislation just establish the maximum amounts, but not necessarily the average amounts?
Sure. The legislation says that you may not receive compensation more than $100 for each meeting. And you are allowed reimbursement of your actual and necessary expenses.
But other agencies have stipends and things like that for other parts of the service. I'm not arguing for it. I don't take any of the compensation, but it seems to me more complex than that, because I know, for example, that our sanitary district, East Palo Alto Sanitary District, each director there makes $10,000 or $20,000 a year. So there must be some other way that that's paid.
Well, I can't comment on, I don't know what their enabling legislation is like. I'm just telling you that what your legislation says for the fire district.
It certainly wouldn't hurt to find out what other boards are doing.
Robert, Virginia, do you have any thoughts or comments? Okay.
Not me. I have no thoughts on that.
Thank you.
You might a couple more.
Chuck? Chuck?
Thank you. We did not specify, Francine, but I think we should, a time where the project would be due. And
Yeah,
I'm wondering if you have some thoughts about how long this should take someone.
yeah, so I do, excuse me, and you know, it takes a long time, unfortunately. It's unless we carve it out and we do each, you know, group separately to study 32 or even 37 if it is classifications and not just compensation work could easily take over a year. Right before I left Milpitas, we were in negotiations with one of our groups, AFSCME, and they had requested study of 2 classifications. 2 classifications, we had, I think, 6 incumbents in each of the classifications with the PDQs, the incumbent interviews, the supervisor interviews, the external study. It took just about 8 weeks for 2 classifications. So depending upon how many people they have working on this study, you know, and then just the timing of employees to get their questionnaire completed, and then after they complete it, to get it over to the supervisor and then to schedule the meetings. It's pretty labor intensive to do class work. So
prioritize the AFSCME portion because that's the one that we have to deal with first.
yes, definitely, and that can be done. You know,
And that's what I thought we were doing anyway, because their contract is up now. So,
They thought,
Yes.
they think the same thing.
right. And that
Yeah.
the firefighters would be a little bit later.
Well, we have to look at MOUs too. And I haven't looked at it in a while, but there was at least at one point where they would want that jointly, let alone, you know, they pick certain bench cities. I'm not familiar if it's still in their MOU, but that was in there before. So I think you got to be careful not to build too big of either what we would call the elephant or the circus tent. So, you know, we got enough, there's a lot here already. I don't think we were thinking about the board. That's certainly something you can do, but, you know, it gets back to one of the original intents as well was to address the compensation or benefits for the unrepresented, especially since, you know, there's a portion of that which was under question, and the methodologies and what would work is all part of that. So, you know, when I talked to Francine about, we were looking at a year just with the parts that we had in here. I'm no expert on this stuff, but yeah, everything takes time and it's definitely going to cost more money to do it. So do you want that timeliness beforehand if you're not in negotiations yet, for example, with IAFF, especially if they want involvement? That's probably something to talk about.
Let me finish this question though. I guess I'm suggesting that we put a target time in there and let the bidders tell us whether they could make that or not, and how much extra that might cost if in fact it costs more or something. But I think we should have some target in there rather than make this, you know, whenever you feel like type of thing.
yeah. I mean, we didn't really want it to be whenever they felt like it. We were going to use that information that they provided as one of the rating criteria that I did discuss earlier. The timeline was part of the rating criteria, but we can definitely insert a target date. Were you interested in a target date for the entire, or parsing it out and saying, you know, AFSCME completed, you know, by this, and UNREP this, and then, you know, IAFF and the board. Did you want it to that like granular?
Yeah.
Just kind of.
Well, it seems to make sense to do the AFSCME portion and then the rest. So
Well,
Yeah, the only.
Virginia,
yes.
before I get to Virginia, Robert had his hand up first.
oh, okay.
it's probably along the same line because two questions or two areas of maybe FYI. We're talking about different groups in terms of looking at those groups and maybe prioritizing, which makes a lot of sense, especially whatever is in before us now that we have to wrestle with, and then what's coming down the pike. Francine, you mentioned that this particular study, the way it's configured right now, your guesstimation is about a year to get through what's before us, and if there's any tack on it, maybe go another couple of months or so down the road. So in terms of pricing, what is the cost? I mean, I noticed you got to wait for folks to come back with what it would take in terms of, based on what we have right now, what that pricing will look like. And based on your experience, do you have any ballpark figures for that?
Yes. So, if they gave us like a group discount, or bulk, typically like comp studies, depending upon how many agencies you're using as your comparator agencies, you can get a comp study down in about maybe $400 per classification. Classification studies can be a lot more. That can range from 800 to 1,000 per class. So if we kind of round that down and say 1,000 per, or maybe 1,100 per, it could be upwards anywhere to close to $40,000 for a total comprehensive classification and compensation study for, this many classifications, say, 35 classifications. And that's just a ballpark.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to look at is as a function of time now, in terms of if that's a typical time frame based upon the 40,000, we want to try to squeeze that into a 6 months or so time frame. I'm sure that the company is going to have to look to hire more people to try to make this happen. And how much do you think that may explode the budget up to?
Yeah, that's kind of a hard one to
I know.
To estimate is if depending upon the proposer, if they have the bandwidth, and if not, to increase staff at a level that they could complete it within 6 months. I mean, I guess it could, ideally go at least another 10 grand over that, maybe 50, maybe more. Yeah, could 60,
I understand.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that would, yeah. It's something we need to take into consideration, how fast we want the thing to happen. And remember, it's going to be a function of price. So,
Yes. Thank you, Director Jones.
Virginia, did you have a question or comment?
Sorry. Yeah, a little, like kind of along the lines of Robert. What would so it seemed, if I remember correctly, when we had this discussion to do this, it's kind of what Jim mentioned after, we had that discussion with the 401A, or is it 401 or 403 or 401A, whatever that program is. Yeah. And we were going to focus on the immediate situation with the confidential and the non-sworn employees, the AFSCME employees. So, I mean, how much time, if we were to focus on that part first, how much time do you think we would shave off? I mean, because I do think that if we had to prioritize, I would want to prioritize that first, given the contract situation and the information that we might want to use. So how much would that take? How much time would that take for just those two?
Just AFSCME or AFSCME and UNREP? I'm sorry.
UNREP and AFSCME.
Okay, so then that goes back to the 32 classifications that we identified.
Yeah, that, which I think is your original.
That was the original, request. So I think that, depending, like Director Jones said, depending upon, how, I guess, much we pay, I guess we could try to buy down that timeline. But I think that it could, still be upwards up to a year. The only concern that I have if we were to parse out AFSCME and do AFSCME and try to get a completed report for AFSCME before moving on to UNREP is that AFSCME has a great deal of interest in the class of comp for UNREP. So I'm not sure that would satisfy them as it pertains to negotiations.
I agree.
Yeah. So I think that they kind of would have to be done in tandem.
Together, yes.
Because
I mean, that was one of the reasons for doing it was.
Right. And they're looking because those classifications, some of them are, some of them, that line is very gray. They're very close and they want that kind of, that understanding of where they are. With IFF, it's kind of a whole different
Correct.
with the requirements. So I agree that even though it may seem like it makes sense to do AFSCME first, I'm not sure that would satisfy AFSCME. We would have to kind of do those in tandem.
You mean with
Yeah.
the unrepresented,
Yes.
not with IAF?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, just to be clear. Okay,
Yes, thank you.
thank you.
Chuck, I think I saw your hand next.
Yeah, it seems to me, Francine, that's a good question to ask me. Hey, they can either wait longer to resolve all this and get that additional information, or they can get their portion first and get moving. And
Yeah,
they can't have it both ways. They can't have a problem without all the information.
yeah, that's a very good point. I did actually speak to the AFSCME rep just, I think it wasn't yesterday because yesterday was Sunday, so it must have been last week. It feels like yesterday. And she was asking, actually, she's like, have you started? And she didn't ask just the AFSCME. She's like the AFSCME and the UNREP, but I could make that clarification. We're actually scheduled, I believe, to meet this week. She wanted to meet with me, not in regards to negotiations, but just to kind of to introduce ourselves. So I'd be happy to pose that question. But as Director Crawley said, I believe, and I don't want to presume, so I do want to get clarification that they're going to be very much interested in UNREP as well.
You should, however, be sure to consult with our negotiator with them.
Yes.
As part of that, because those negotiations have started.
Yes, he's included on all of our conversations.
They're all looped in together.
Okay. And Jim, when it's my turn again, I have 2 more questions.
Okay. Rob, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. This is directed to Stephen. Stephen, I've done Transparent California, and I see that Belmont, EPA, and Menlo Park go way over the $100 limit per meeting by their compensation package. So how do they justify Menlo Park $36,664.96 compensation for 2018 for a council member, Belmont $9,359.28 for 2018. EPA council member $13,313. So how do they go over that $100 limit, Stephen?
So the answer to your question is the same as what I mentioned before, is that there are different statutory rules governing compensation for board members of different types of local governments. There are rules governing city council members. There are rules governing county boards of supervisors. There are different rules for specifically fire districts, as different from, mosquito and vector control districts. These are all set by statutes. There are general rules that under some circumstances allow an elected board to go over the statutory rules if they take action to do so, and if they don't exceed, I think it's 5% per year, and it's subject to referendum by the voters. So what I'm describing as firm legal statutory rules, there are ways to get around them with voter approval in a transparent fashion. But the answer to your question is that this is not a city.
Okay.
And the city of Menlo Park would compensate its council members differently from the council members of the city of Los Angeles. So it's just a different animal.
Okay, thank you.
Francine, I have a question. With regard to reviewing management compensation, we have we pay stipends to management employees. Under this model, if the jurisdictions that we're being compared against, if they weren't paying a management stipend, would that fact be captured in the reporting?
Yes, so just because another comparable agency doesn't offer a benefit doesn't mean we wouldn't include the benefit we offer. Likewise, if another agency offers a benefit that we don't, doesn't mean we won't include that benefit. So we're looking at total comp. The residency stipends will for sure be included in the calculations.
Can I follow on, Jim, with that?
Yeah.
In the firefighter, there are ranges for per hour ranges for various classifications. But because of the 54-hour schedule or whatever they have, there's some mandatory overtime built into that. Would that also, assuming we include IAFF, would that overtime portion that's part of regular compensation be included as well?
Yeah, so typically we have the option of including that or not. There's many other agencies. Santa Clara was one that we also included an FLSA overtime because they were working on standard more than the number of hours required for the firefighter. So if you're looking at 53 a week, 106 every 2 weeks or 212, and if they exceed that, then you're required to pay the FLSA overtime. Some agencies chose to build that into the salary schedule to avoid any issues with not kind of compensating the employees. So we can include that, and if we do, we'll include it for all agencies that pay that as well.
And there would be some footnote that explained that or whatever.
Right. We would definitely put a footnote to say this is the FLSA regular rate of pay. We wouldn't include any basically flexible overtime. So 1 week someone works overtime, we're not going to be including that. No. But yeah, we would include the FLSA percentage that is built into the tables for the shift employees.
Hey, Jim.
Harold, Chief?
Yeah, just so you know, Mike Schaefer looked up for me that firefighters IFF MOU comes up in June 23rd of 2023. So you're 2 years and 4 months away. Now they do have a clause in their MOU that says that the purpose of the survey is to ensure that union and the district are utilizing the same data and negotiations to assist parties in achieving the mutual goal of ensuring that the compensation of represented employees is fair. So you're going to be pretty far out there, and you're going to need them to agree with your methodology. The other thing it says, the CalPERS employer rates shall not be included in the joint compensation study, which may not be what you want for other classifications. And then finally, it says the survey agencies shall be, and it lists who they shall be. It says, and such of the comparisons as either party wishes to include. So it is more, there's prescriptions in there which may not be in what we've done already. So you have to match that up. And then of course, we have not been meeting and conferring with them on any of this because the assumption was it's so far away, we weren't doing anything. And of course, the non-represented confidential chief officers and AFSCME are all up either right now or on extension or are still kind of in that void with things like benefits. So anyway, just that's the update.
So Chief, would it be your recommendation then not to do that at this time?
Yeah, I think it's too much to do. And I think it's, you're 2 years and 4 months away. Whatever you come up with is not going to be relevant when you get to it. And of course, that's what they're going to want. Usually within 6 months, you try and start ahead of time. So, you get to that data, then you can start having your discussions. So arguably you're 2 years out.
All right. Chuck, I think I saw Virginia first.
Please.
I would agree with Harold on that and just stick pretty much to what the staff report said, which is what Francine is talking about, just from a timing perspective. And I mean, and I'm not even sure. I mean, Rob, I understand. Well, I don't understand. I mean, what do you want to accomplish with the board members being thrown in there? I mean, I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. I mean, I don't take any of this anyway. I'm just curious what the purpose of that would be.
Well, as suspect, Stephen says that, through through whatever legislation that, regulatory issues prevail, I mean, it's pretty much open and shut. As I said, I've just gone on, California transparency, and that has come up with those different type of compensation packages. And two of the cities are cities that we serve. And the Harbor District being a special district, are you compensated yearly for that?
Yes, but our compensation is governed by the Harbors and Navigations Code. I mean, it's completely different.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
so
that's
Steve,
what
yeah,
we're
so
talking
Steve,
about then.
what was that?
I said, well, as Stephen said, special
Right.
districts are covered. So the Harbor District would be under a special legislative code or whatever, but
Right, that's
it
the
appears that we're not.
enabling legislation. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, I believe Stephen.
Well, I was gonna bring up that particular situation, Rob, just to kind of prove Steve's point, because that is the case in
Right.
terms of the Harbors and Navigations Code. So
Robert, I
anyway,
think I saw Chuck first and I'll come
thank
back.
you,
to
Jim.
Yeah, I want to take issue on this firefighters thing because Chief, I don't think you're correct on what you've just said. I believe that is in our MOU, but that pertains to our negotiations. This pertains to a study where we get information, and there's no way the firefighters union can stop us from looking into things and doing a study. It's none of their business, frankly. And I have been through 2 IAFF negotiations, and neither time did we have any information because we never started it in advance. We know it could take a long time. We not one time have had comparable information about what other agencies are offering. And I think this study, well in advance, could tell us where we stand vis-a-vis other agencies. It could tell us if there are things we ought to look into as we get down toward the negotiations. And if we want to do a joint thing, that would be fine. The union could pay half of it and we could pay half of it. But this is us paying to get information. And there's no way that the firefighters union can stop us from getting information. I mean, I think you're reading something, but it's not applicable to this. And I guess I'd like to ask Stephen.
I'm reading their MOU.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with what we study. They can't stop us from studying something. And we're not using it in a negotiation. We're not in negotiation. So it seems to me it's none of their damn business. And I'd like to ask Stephen.
Well, let me just respond to none of their business. I think all the groups, when it comes to compensation, it's personal. It's what they get paid. So it is their business. It may be that you choose to do something different. I just would question, and even if you could do it, why would you do it 2.5 years before you need it? You have to redo it again anyway.
Right.
So
Exactly.
and why would you make it adversarial? I mean, I'm telling you from an 8-year battle with the union that you probably want to at least start cooperative, and try and find a common ground versus, to have a shotgun wedding, so to speak, and have information that they were never involved with. And I know this is a super sensitive issue for them. So, and I get it. And I think everybody, at least if you look at what AFSCME is asking for, they want to have this be part of what they're doing. So they're not bucking it. In fact, they want that data, and that's understandable. They also don't want a classification that it just be them and not all the other groups. And then I would say, for example, AFSCME has a 401A still, the other groups don't. So I mean, I think there's going to be adjustments along the way. But again, look, no disrespect. I think you focus on what you need to focus on, and then discuss what else could be coming again 2+ years down the road.
Virginia?
Jim, I think that, I don't know if you're taking public comment, but I'm looking at the panelists or the participants, and it looks like there is a public comment from an Ashley Mates. So I think maybe, and I don't know, is that the AFSCME rep?
Yes.
Now, I would like to hear from her what her thoughts are at right now as a member of the public. I don't know if you saw that, Jim. So if you
No.
didn't see it, I'm bringing it to your attention. If you saw it, then do what you want to do procedurally, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that there is a hand raised, and I would like to hear from the public.
Right. Yeah, as would I. So I think this is as good a time as any to hear from that person. Michelle, do we have someone from the public that would like to speak?
Yes. Ashley, are you able to unmute yourself?
Disappeared.
Yeah, she disappeared. I don't know why.
All right. But if she should reappear and wish
Yeah.
to speak, we can hear from her later.
Because I still want to address my question to Stephen, if we're prohibited from having information like that.
Is your question whether you're prohibited from studying including the firefighters in this study?
That was the chief's assertion that we're prohibited by the MOU, and I don't believe that's the case. And I wanted to hear your opinion on that.
Well, I'm not sure I heard the chief say that, but my opinion is that you are not prohibited from gathering information any way you like. The MOU would describe what you do with that information and whether you've collected the proper information necessary on which to base some future negotiating positions. But the answer to your question is no.
Thank you.
Director
Virginia?
McLaughlin, I just
Yes.
wanted to let you know that somebody did come on. It doesn't say Ashley, but I think it is. And it says Ask Me 829 if you want me to allow that person to speak.
Are you able to communicate with them before we bring them in?
Unfortunately, I'm not.
Okay, I would just ask that you be prepared to.
I believe it's going to be Ashley, but
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to bring that to your attention, Jim, that the hand
Thank you.
raised.
So if you bring the person in, Michelle, I would just ask that they identify themselves and their affiliation.
Ask Me 829, can you please identify yourself, and you're free to give your public comment?
Hi, my name is Ashley Mates. Yes, I'm the AFSCME rep for the AFSCME employees. And I just want to echo that I think Francine and Chief Shuppelhoman have done a very good job representing our position, that we expect that the AFSCME unit be done, the class and comm study be done in conjunction with the unrepresented and management unit. Because our contention has always been that the inequity exists not with the rest of the market, but within the fire district. And we want the class and comm study to show, or we hope that the class and comm study will show that the management and unrepresented units, the disparity between our unit and their unit is different than the space between similar classifications and other agencies. And particularly one of the other things we're interested in, which I've spoken to Eddie about and with Chief Shuppelhoman, is that also what the composition of similar bargaining units look like at other agencies. So as a matter of position, if you only studied the AFSCME unit, that would not be helpful in terms of bargaining or resolving any of the concerns we have with the difference between how the unrepresented unit is treated versus us.
All right. Well, I sure appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Thank you. Virginia?
Jim, it's 4 o'clock, and I think we have this 6 o'clock deadline. I don't want to rush what we need to actually get done in terms of goal setting. So I would like to make a motion to authorize the staff to initiate a request for proposal for the AFSCME and unrepresented classification and compensation study.
I'll second that.
Do I understand that would exclude the IAFF?
For right now, yeah. This would focus on what we originally discussed that we would be focusing on, and we can, as soon as I think we need more information to understand what we can or can't do, or should or shouldn't do. I mean, I don't know. I mean, no one's afraid to do another study, class and comp study for the sworn personnel. But I think right now, since we've got a contract situation coming up, that we should focus on the immediate need. And that's why I made the motion. And thanks for seconding that, Robert.
All right. Any discussion? Chuck?
I want to ask a question about the unrepresented for a moment. On page 14 of the RFP, roughly in the middle of the page, it lists the senior management analyst, and it says it's both exempt and non-exempt. And I'm curious to know what that means.
Oh, that's a good question. So this is part of the reason for the study is I also found out that we have one classification that is represented under one that's exempt and one that's not exempt, and it's one job description. It's not a separate job description. So this is something that shouldn't be. Basically, the exempt or non-exempt FLSA status should be based on a job description. And we should not have one job description where we have one employee FLSA overtime eligible and one not. That creates like a big legal issue. So that's why when we are doing this class study, we're asking how these positions should be classified in regards to FLSA status.
Let's clean up. We're also going to do cleanup in here because AFSCME has raised those concerns, and we've determined those are legitimate concerns as to classifications, who's in their bargaining unit, who was excluded, and how that can all be realigned to industry standard.
Okay, and then I have three quick comments, Jim. Can I make them now about the RFP?
Certainly, please.
Okay. One is, it's not a big deal, but to me, the letters of reference that are in the RFPs, I mean, you've only got 10% for them, but I think the letters are going to be good because they wouldn't put them in there if they weren't good. And I don't know how you can distinguish them. I would hope that you would actually call the agencies in question and then go by the comments that people actually made rather than the letters that are in there. So that's just a comment. The second comment I have is I'd like some locus of management of this project to be in the hands of our HR committee. I think we had a problem with another study that we did where it proceeded, we didn't get the information. And in the end, the board needs this information. And it also is something that, what shall I say, the staff who would be involved in it has a self-interest in it because they're included in it. And it seems to me that we ought to at least have some sort of participation in the study by the HR committee. And the third comment is that I'm actually going to vote against the motion because I would like to see us have a thorough study. I'd like to look at all our benefits and see what we're doing because while the IAFF is a different unit, they're still people. And I think we ought to look at all our people as sort of equal human beings in the district. So.
Great, thank you. You know, I'd like to share my thoughts. You know, I would like to see an aggressive schedule. I appreciate that it will drive the costs higher. I think, again, we took an action, you know, late last year that took money out of people's pockets, right? And I'm very sensitive to that. And we gave our assurances that we would examine that in a timely manner. And if there was an opportunity to, if there were any inequities or things that needed to be balanced, you know, in this calendar year, we would endeavor to do it in this calendar year so that we could make it retroactive if that were indicated. So, you know, I would, and you know, perhaps this will be, you know, a separate motion from Virginia's. And I echo Chuck's interest in having HR committee involvement, especially if we're looking at management compensation. You know, that is a board prerogative, you know, directly. And I think there should be board involvement. You know, I think I'd probably through the HR committee would be the first or the best place to have that representation. So
Jim, I think all that's possible. because before it comes to the board, the committee can be used as the filter to make sure everything was ready and so forth. So for some of that reporting, equally, yeah, I think to your point, I mean, Francine laid out, it's a little bit different for someone to come in here and sit at a desk, do a desk audit and all those things than it is, for example, the elephants in the room are going to be, you want to take care of AFSCME as soon as possible because they're in contract or out of contract right now. And then equally to make the items correct for the staff members that did have their benefits affected. I think we can, correct me if I'm wrong, Francine, we can parse that with at least some more aggressive timelines to see if that's what they do first. Because, ultimately in an RFP, you get to prioritize those things to some extent. So I don't, unless Francine tells me different, I think that's already what we were thinking would be how we would guide whoever ultimately gets the RFP, but equally discuss that in there.
That's correct.
Jim?
I think Virginia had her hand up first, Rob.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Then-
so Jim, I think that in terms of a schedule, I think, to get this thing done quickly, that is something that maybe the HR committee can look at as well. I don't know if that needs to be a separate motion or just direction if we approve my motion. So, I mean, I think there are different options, but I agree that the HR committee should be, involved at least from an oversight role kind of thing.
I guess my thought is, Virginia, if we're going to, green light this RFP, should we address that scheduling issue? Because there's a cost involved.
Right, I know. So do you want to address that issue tonight after this issue, or do you want this to go back to the committee to address, and then we just get the RFP schedule
Perhaps
done?
it could be, you could amend your motion to include language that that Francine and the chief explore, the means to do it as rapidly as possible.
Or just give us guidance right now, which is what you're doing.
Right, I think that's possible. I guess my hesitation is it's not really a hesitation, but just maybe a question is what the cost would be if there are different, if speeding it up in different ways would cost more or less. I mean, what is the cost differential between the time frames? And I'm not trying to be
You won't know because it's an RFP, but it's got to come back. So I mean, when we
right.
but asking those questions is not a problem. That's
Okay. So I don't think I need to amend my motion unless, Steve, do you think I need to? I mean, I think we're giving them guidance right now, but the motion to move forward with an RFP is still a motion to move forward with it. And then we can, unless the board wants me to amend it, that I'm fine either way. I mean,
I'm fine with guidance.
okay, then my motion's just,
okay.
okay, yeah. So then my motion will stand along with Robert's second, and then we'll just give guidance to the staff about
So
this.
Rob Solana first, and then Robert.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chuck makes a really good point in comparing all these plans that we have and the different classifications of all our different employees. Stephen, I did find the Assembly Bill number 2329 that you stated, so I would not want to include the board members in any type of review like this because it's by statute. So, thank you for finding that for us before. But I think Chuck makes a pretty good point myself in guarding the full classification packages for all the employees. So thank you, Jim.
All right. Robert?
I kind of follow the same line of what Virginia is talking about. I think this is a two-step process. I agree that the HR committee should be engaged in looking at the RFP and what goes out and kind of monitoring that. So the process one is let's approve this thing right now to move forward. And then what's already been first and second, and then look at the guidance that to be directed towards staff to see what that process would would look like, if at all. And because I think we need to kind of be mindful of what the dollar amount that we really want to spend. If it's a, let the checkbook roll kind of thing versus, being able to see, stay within a certain dollar amount, I think it would be prudent as a board. So, but I think the guidance is going to kind of drive Francine and Chief as to what that time frame is going to look like. And I didn't think it'd come back to the HR committee would be an appropriate place to land it. And hopefully it doesn't go back. If it doesn't have to come back to the board, then I think, we can save ourselves a month or, a lag time in terms of having to come back and get the board approve it and then go forward. I think I would like to operate within a not to exceed parameter. And if it goes beyond that point, then, maybe we have to come back to the board, which would look at the timing, asking ourselves the question, is the timing really, do we want to squeeze it down that quickly, or is there something else in between?
All right, thank you. Stephen, I think you had a comment for us.
Nope, all good
Okay.
here.
All right, if there's no, Rob?
Yeah, this is for Francine. Francine, you mentioned to add those additional classifications, there were 5.
So
Yeah,
I just,
correct.
yeah, it may be 4. What I mean is that firefighter, driver, engineer, fire captain. Yeah, I'm not sure how many it would be. It's not a lot, and it's probably, the chief was reading basically what we would need to do per the MOU if we were studying. If we wanted to do anything with that information, we have to comply with the information in the MOU. Of course, we can survey whatever we want, but we do need employee involvement, right? Because we're going to be asking employees to do position description questionnaires. We're going to be scheduling interviews. So all that will take time and will take employee involvement. We're not going to be able to proceed without that.
Okay, and then when we're talking the 4 or 5, that does not include us as board members, correct?
Yeah, and I may have
Okay,
overstated. Yeah, maybe it's, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that verification. Okay,
Yes,
okay, thank you. Thank you.
thank you very much.
I just want to say very briefly, I think given, the IAFF contract and that it's far enough out, 2.5 years out, that I think it'd be premature to do that study now. I think they should be partners with us in that endeavor. So with that said,
Jim, one last thing.
yes.
Be quick. I'll be quick. So, hey, I want to say thank you to Francine and Stephen as well, and everybody that touched this thing, but specifically Francine jumping in. This was one of the first things that we gave her when she got here. I know she worked over the weekend on it. It's kind of a big deal to hand something this big over to somebody right out of the gate. So the good news is she's got 20 years as an HR person, and obviously now is our manager, and very pleased to see how she was able to put everything together, but worked really hard to do all that. So thank you, Francine. And obviously having someone of her caliber here is going to be very good for this organization.
Jim? Jim, I have just one more question for Francine. Francine,
Yes.
when you're doing these extra classifications, what would you think would be the add-on time if we did add on the other classifications to this? Just an estimate.
Yeah.
Another year or?
Oh,
maybe,
no, yeah, no, I don't think so. I think that the thing too with classification work is, and I saw this as I was reviewing some of the salary surveys that were completed in the last AFSCME negotiations, is the difficult and one of the more time consuming is when you can't find comps. So obviously for our IFF folks, those are standard classifications, right? Firefighter, driver, engineer, fire captain. So those will be easy to find comps. We won't have trouble finding a classification. So I don't think it will take, I mean, maybe it would add like another, and I'm just guessing, 3 months or something to the project. But again, as the chief mentioned, we could do whatever we want in the study, but if we didn't comply with the MOU language when we're doing this class study, then basically we might as well not do the study at all, because we wouldn't be able to apply the information we receive in any useful way. Because yeah,
Thank you, Francine. That's reasonable.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
All right, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, Michelle, please call the vote.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bernstein,
No,
and Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right, well, Francine, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
And I
Francine.
would just say, just to summarize, the guidance would be, as I understand it, we would like to do it as rapidly as possible, but have some sense and maybe a tiered, 3 months would be this much, 6 months would be this much, 12 months would be, would be this cost, so that we can evaluate where, what we want to spend when that contract comes before us.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank
I would
you.
like to request that the minutes reflect my no vote represents that I would like to see the study include all of the district employees.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
well, Francine, thank you again.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Francine.
All right, it looks like we're going to be dividing our time almost in half there, Belinda. So we'll pivot to the next item on the agenda, the strategic planning and board goals. So Harold or Chief, I don't know if you want to tee this up or you want to hand it right off to Belinda.
Yeah, no, I know time is a factor, so I'll definitely hand it off very quickly. But, as you know, this is obviously an annual process that, would be great when we go through. Last year, I think you spent a lot of time working on the process itself. Director Jones obviously took the lead. Belinda was brought in. Chief Navarro has been working with Belinda. Chief Navarro has been working with me. I think he went through that at the committee meeting, which not everybody got to hear. But, we tried to take all of that and then put it up into these slides right here. So the ultimate goal is, what do you want? What does the board want to get tackled this year? What issues, do you still need to resolve? And then, give that hopefully plan or program to the staff so that we can properly, spend our time doing what you want and making sure it's done within a timeline that hopefully people would accept as well. I would just add this, every year new stuff comes up. So, it'd be good to go back like the cities do from time to time if that does occur, and then reevaluate or reshuffle the priorities and either add or subtract time, because all this is just, it's staff time, right? It's how then hopefully you promulgate or give things to the committees to also work on. So that would be the ideal structure, which is laid out in here. With that, I'll flip it to Belinda because she's the expert in doing that.
Thank you, Chief, and nice to see everybody and great to be here. A lot has happened since a year ago when we first did this process. You all, the board members, you will remember we set meeting agreements last year. We did some visioning and we identified all of our ideas about goals for the year, and then we kind of narrowed in and made some decisions. So we'll do a similar process this afternoon, but more streamlined, because you have your strategic plan and those goals, and you also have the list from last year. So we'll just make adjustments as needed, have some discussion, and then make some decisions about your top priorities within the strategic plan goals by the end of our meeting. And let's aim for 6 o'clock. That'll be the goal, and it'll be, roughly with this time spread, but we might adjust a little bit. So we'll spend some time talking about vision for the year, just to kind of ground ourselves in what we want the priorities to serve, right? What is it that you're hoping to see happen? And we'll take a look, Chief Navarro will go over the strategic plan goals briefly, and then because we'll think about what priorities you all have within those goals. Also, we'll do some of the work on a whiteboard and take some notes. And I have my associate Annie, who will be helping me with some of those notes, just so that you know. And she's on the meeting as well. Great. So let's start. Last time we also went around and talked about what drives your passion, each of you, for the fire district. And that was like a very meaningful discussion, I thought. And I thought tonight we could just do a one word, just to go around with like one word each from each of you to get us started, that a word that represents what drives your passion for the district and serving on the board. So maybe if we could hear from Director Jones first, Director Solano, then Director Corrali, Director Bernstein, and then McLaughlin. And we'll do several go-arounds just to make sure we hear from everyone throughout. So, and if you forgot that order, I can remind you, but let's start with Director Jones. One word about what drives your passion.
Boy, that's a tough one. I guess one word, kind of focus, opportunity, focus and opportunity. Maybe I just had to include both of them together.
That's okay. Thank you. And thanks for starting us off. Director Solano.
Have to unmute there, Rob.
Rob, you.
Thank you. Looking at Manny's 9 strategic plan goals and objectives from his accreditation project, what I'd like to see, and I think Manny has done an excellent job, and so have you, where pretty much anything that we're going to work on or consider goals and objectives from our board will fall into any one of these 9 areas. So I think both Manny, Chief, and Belinda, you've done a really good job in interacting the 9 strategic goals that are part of the accreditation process. So
Rob, I think you stepped away briefly.
One word.
One word.
She's like,
And
one word. What
teamwork.
For now, we're going to get into all this, but and thank you.
How about teamwork?
But we need your one word.
Teamwork. Okay.
Teamwork. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. I know it's hard. Just one word. Okay. Director Corrali, Bernstein, and McLaughlin.
So one word to describe what I'm passionate about of serving on the board.
Exactly.
Helping.
Thank you.
I think I'm next, and my word would be survival.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is service.
Thank you. Yes. Wonderful. So yes, and I remember last time just the strength of the commitment and the giving back and all of your incredible diverse experience and commitment to this work that you do. So thank you. So we're gonna move along to, and you'll remember from last time, let's see, there we go. Last time we used this tool, Fist of 5, right? And so this is a way of, rather than like, I agree, I disagree, is like exploring the range of agreement. And it's not to vote, right? You have a process for how you vote, take votes on things, but this is like a tool for before you vote to take the temperature and to help facilitate people sharing where they're at on a particular matter. So 5 is like five fingers, I strongly agree, and I'll take a leadership role to implement it. 4, I strongly agree, and I'll actively support it. 3 is I agree. 2 is I have doubts. 1 is I disagree, but I'll go along with it. And 0 is I would block it if I could. So we used that tool last year, and we'll use it again tonight. And these were the meeting agreements.
Something here, Belinda, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can you go back to that a second?
Yes.
The thing you just had. I do recall that we used this and so forth. You talked us through it, and I don't think some of these other words were there, and so I'm a little I'm troubled by the wording. I think words like I strongly agree is fine, but when I get down to would block this decision if I could, that sounds like, and I would storm the Capitol if I could. And I'll tell you, I'd like to be able to express disagreement but also acknowledge that I live in a democracy and that democracy prevails. So this idea of
Yeah.
blocking or sabotaging or destroying or something is not the
Okay.
vocabulary that, so I don't feel comfortable subscribing to these words.
Okay. I would
and-
stop this decision if I could.
Well, how can you even do that? If we're a legislative body, if it votes, how do we stop the decision? And so, no, I mean, I wouldn't even stop it.
Okay.
How about we stop with one? With the index.
I was
finger,
gonna say
one.
that, but then
Right.
Just, we just say, I strongly disagree.
Just
Yeah.
period.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, just, I strongly disagree. That'll be 0, and then 1 will just be, I disagree, but it will go along with the decision.
Well,
Or do you want to just say,
you always have to go along with the decision. What's the option? I feel like we should just be able to say, I strongly disagree. I disagree. I mean, the adjective or in this case, the adverb here, I strongly disagree. Strongly is fine, but I just
Okay.
don't want to put something else on that.
Okay.
That's noted.
Is everyone okay? Does anyone have any objection to changing the 0 to just, I strongly disagree? Okay, thank you. Let's keep going. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Any other comments on that? Okay. So these were the meeting agreements that you came up with last time. And so just as part of our refresh of priorities, I think it would be helpful just to also review this list of meeting agreements. Would someone volunteer to read the meeting agreements that you all adopted last year?
Belinda, I think everybody's had a chance to look at these just in the interest of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We can skip the reading it
We're
through.
such a collegial bunch that we live these principles.
That's great. Are there any that you would want to adjust now that you've lived with these for a year, or change? Anything you want to add?
I think it's great the way it is, right? Myself personally, I think it all of this is an affirmation, and I think annually we should affirm that, because you can silently affirm it and you can openly affirm it. So I'm openly this now saying I think these are great, and I think we should try to seek those whenever possible.
Okay, great. Thank you, Director Jones. Director Bernstein, you had a comment?
Well, I agree with what Robert just said. I'm fine with them, but I would say that I frankly don't care if I have some fun or don't have some fun. I have a job to do. I'm committed to doing the job, and whether I have fun or not is immaterial. But I'm not opposed to someone else having fun.
Okay, we could consider deleting that one. Other comments?
I have a quick comment. So it's kind of similar to the very last comment, which is process with purpose, begin with the end in mind. I almost feel like, we should be asking ourselves, what do we want to accomplish whenever we have a discussion or whenever we're looking at an item? And so I don't know if that question comes under that last check mark. I mean,
what do we want to accomplish?
What do we want to accomplish? Yeah. Or what are we trying to accomplish here? Or what do we want to accomplish?
Great.
Thanks.
Other comments or adjustments? Director McLaughlin or
No, thank you. I join Robert with Robert just affirming them. They're a solid basis for us to operate and move forward.
And I like the fun. I like to have fun too. You know what I mean? I don't like to come to meetings and be fighting all the time, or looking at folks like the cross-eyed all the time, and folks because if you got if you come with your heart open, then you're gonna allow those other things to take place. So to me, it should be a fun meeting. It shouldn't be a depressed meeting. So
put that one back.
That's just me.
Director Solano. Oops, use your mute.
You muted, Rob. There you go.
I just want to, the reason why I have my mic on mute is because my dog keeps running to the door and I don't want to disturb everyone. But I think that collectively, we're in a good place here. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Does one of you want to make a motion to adopt these meeting agreements?
So moved.
Second. Oh, Jim, go ahead. Your honor this year. So go ahead.
All right.
Okay. Did we get everybody?
There was a motion made, it's second, and
Roll call.
a roll call going to take place, or?
Or do you want to use the fist of 5 here?
Yeah, fist of 5.
I
There you
think we
go.
got the temperature that there was a lot of agreement, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I mean, we have a motion on the table,
Right.
so we
Michelle,
should
are you-
probably go through, just do the roll call. Since there's a
Right.
motion and a second, you gotta,
So I guess it's Michelle.
Michelle.
or Harold.
Michelle's,
Steve.
I
Michelle's
can take the role if you would like.
Yeah, Steve, would you mind taking the roll?
Sure. Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Corrali,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
and Director McLaughlin.
Aye.
That's unanimous. The motion carries.
Okay, great, thank you. Now we're going to talk, spend a few minutes just thinking about your vision and hopes for the district in the year ahead. And that's to kind of help ground the work that we do next, thinking about what are your individual and the board priorities, the things that you care most about for the district to focus on for the year ahead. So just take a couple of minutes to write or think silently to yourself. We'll hear from the board members, but certainly other people in the meeting, you can also feel free to think about, what are your best hopes and vision for the Menlo Park Fire Protection District in 2021? What does that look like? I'll just give you a couple minutes to think about that. And then we'll go around and hear from each board member. Take just another minute to wrap up.
Gotta have that elevator music going.
It's vision music.
Yeah.
Okay, who would like to start?
I'll jump in there.
Okay,
All
let's start with
right.
Director Jones, and then Director Corrali after that, Director Solano, and then Bernstein, and then President McLaughlin after that.
So for me, I looked at my opening statement would be to provide community support to build and provide a viable CERT program in each of our cities and county areas. That's it.
A viable CERT program in each city and county areas.
Right.
Great. Thank you.
Maybe I should have a vitamin B CERT program.
Say it again.
I'm just teasing. I was saying having a vitamin B CERT program.
Vitamin B or B12?
B12 works too.
You got it.
Melinda, is it my turn?
Yes, and are you all seeing the notes on the screen?
No.
No,
Should we scroll down?
Are you seeing it
we
now?
can't scroll.
Or am I
I
share-
think.
You see the half dome photo.
What's that? Oh, you see the half dome photo. Oh, okay. How about now?
Not
No.
yet.
No, we're
Is it,
waiting.
is it underneath the picture or is it above it?
Yeah,
If it's below it, then you probably have to figure out
Yeah.
to scroll down the
Are you
screen.
seeing it now? Oh, your
Yeah, you
screen
need
says
to
my
move the
screen
screen
sharing
up.
is paused.
you need to move the screen up.
Hang on a second.
We just got a quarter
How
cut
about
off.
that?
Oops. Yeah.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay,
There we
Okay.
go.
thank you. We got it.
Thank you. Okay, Director Corrali.
So I have a few things. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I always think that the number one priority for any governing board or elected board of a public agency is to make sure that we're in financially good health, strong finances, which this district is in or has strong finances. So I'm very proud of that. I think we owe it to our taxpayers to continue that work of strong, providing good policies for, well, I'm not even sure if we need any more policies to make sure that tax dollars are in good hands because we have to fulfill our fiduciary duty. I think community preparedness is important, both at the at the community level and the internal employee level. So training, I think, is important. I think training for, as Robert said, like the CERT program at the retail level, if you will. But that's, a different part of the community, but also our governmental partners are that we work with, to make sure that they're prepared as well, which means that we need to be working well with our neighboring or the agencies that are under our jurisdiction. And so for me, I'm hoping that we will have our relationship with the town of Atherton will be stronger and better and more collaborative. I want to make sure that employees have the support that they need, especially if, this pandemic continues. And I mean all of them, because essentially, well, our employees are essential workers.
Mhm.
So I think that's important. And I want to continue to keep the confidence level high that the community has of the fire district and the fire board. And that level of confidence, for me includes, that we are one fire district and that detachment of any of the cities or jurisdictions that we work with is not something that I would support, nor would I want, and in fact would discourage. I
Great,
think that's
thank
pretty
you.
much it for me.
Great. So
On
you,
top of all of the agreements that we just made for how we interact with each other as a board.
great. Okay, so honoring the commitments. So, so you talked about the community preparedness as well, like Director Jones, financial health.
Yeah, but
And-
my community preparedness goes beyond CERT.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Including stronger relationship with Atherton, city of Atherton.
Well, basically with the agencies that we work with currently to ensure that they're prepared at the governmental level and at the community volunteer level.
Thank you.
and the internal level, where, in other words, training, things like that, to make sure that our staff and our suppression personnel are thoroughly or adequately thoroughly trained.
Great, thank you. And then relationships with other agencies, employee support. And
Well, especially during this uncertain time. I mean, the pandemic, look, I mean, we're getting some more information every day. I just want people to know that these are essential workers. And so we need to
Mhm.
respect that and help them and support them when it's needed.
great, thank you. Okay, who was next?
Me.
And wait, hold on, maintain high confidence level.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. All right. I'd say support careful fiscal oversight policies that include a balanced budget and aggressive pay down of our pension liabilities. I have a few of these, Belinda.
That's okay. Let us know if we miss anything, but we're gonna take note of everything.
Okay, great, thank you.
So so far we got the fiscal policies that support a balanced budget and reduce aggressive, you said aggressive reduction of pension liabilities?
Yes, aggressive.
Mhm. Great.
An aggressive pay down. An aggressive pay down. Aggressive pay down of pension liabilities. Correct. Okay, next. Maintain an excellent emergency response times in spite of significant growth and increasing traffic congestion and gridlock.
Okay, great.
Okay. In spite of increase in growth and increasing traffic congestion and gridlock.
Okay.
And Manny's project, which is the completion of the accreditation plan for public safety, for our public safety fire agency. And what we're doing here now is from the accreditation strategic plan, from the accreditation strategic plan, interweaving our goals and objectives with that accreditation plan.
Mhm.
From the interweaving our goals and objectives with our strategic plan as a board.
Okay,
Okay, review. Next one, review, evaluate, prepare, and establish an emergency preparedness plan or program that assists the fire district, town, cities, and surrounding communities involving CERT and other volunteer groups. Okay, lastly, keep pace and update current trends in public safety, equipment, facility upgrades, and adding additional personnel to provide the best service to our community.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Belinda.
Yes, so, okay, so we have more about the balanced budget, pay down of pension liabilities, that fiscal responsibility, keeping up with emergency response times, the importance of accreditation and connecting the accreditation work to the strategic plan. Again, the emergency preparedness plan for the community and CERT, and then keeping up with trends in public safety equipment, facility upgrades, and personnel to best serve the community.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay. Director Bernstein?
Yeah, let me, other people have covered mine, but let me go back. I have maybe one or two different ones, but let me go to the second one down on your list there. Oh wait, it's not the second one down, sorry. It's the fourth one down. Yes. Just to be clear, these agencies are not under our jurisdiction. They're within our boundaries or something. I just want to be clear that we
Yes.
we don't order them around or anything.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Yeah, that's right. I mean,
And
we work with them.
I think I'm in agreement with doing this with Atherton, but we certainly need to do it in Menlo Park and East Palo Alto as well, and the south part of the county. So I think rather than call out Atherton, I think we'd be better saying better relationships with all our jurisdictions or something of that sort. I just would hate to leaving someone out.
I called out Atherton because of the detachment issue.
Yeah, I agree. But
I agree with you
we've had
though,
issues
Chuck.
with other ones too. And,
Yeah.
some people still, some they remember that.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. Thanks.
Okay. And then I don't know that we've captured it exactly, but it's a little bit of a repeat of what Robert said and also what Rob said. But I'd like to see us, through education, instill a consciousness of prevention and mitigation among our residents.
That's good. I like that.
In other words, I want people to be thinking in terms of what might be a danger. What can I do? So it's both prevention and also mitigation, meaning that if the earthquake happens, the TV won't fall on their head. They can't prevent the earthquake, but they can prevent the TV. Conscious of prevention and mitigation among our residents. Yeah, exactly.
Like preparedness through prevention and mitigation.
It's preparedness, but it's just that consciousness. Look, I work in childcare centers and schools. There's not a minute goes by that I don't look at something and say, could that be a danger? Could that be a danger? I'm talking
like public education.
Yeah, how people throw away batteries. What kinds of stuff, is in they leave in their backyard that if a flood would wash down the creek or something like that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things of that sort. And I think we do it through our get ready training and so forth. We talk about awareness of those things so that people start saying, oh yeah, that could be dangerous. I mean, even kind of silly things, but just them looking at their furniture, do they have chairs that are wobbly and could crash down where they'd, break their back or their hip or something of that sort. So anyway, I think that's just an awareness of being safe. And I'd also, then the second thing is, I'd like to build, and this is part of the CERT program, but I also want to make it as broad as possible, a consciousness of residents helping residents in a disaster. Whether it's first aid or food assistance or shelter, whatever.
Great, thank you. Anything, Chief, that you would like to add?
You skipped Jim.
We got Jim at the, oh,
No,
Jim,
no,
I'm
just-
sorry.
Just a couple things, just a couple, you
No,
know,
please, yes.
everyone's done such a great job covering a lot of things. Items that came to mind for me: ensure a strong, effective leadership team, and promote employee-employer relations to ensure we are an employer of choice. That's all I have.
Anything else, President McLaughlin, from the, that you would like to add, or,
I think that's it.
No, that's
Employer,
it for me.
employer, is there employee at the bottom? Did you say employee of choice, Jim, or employer?
oh, employer of choice?
They're all employees of choice.
Well, Jim just struck my, I had written it down, I forgot to mention it. Kind of building on what Jim said, I'm not sure whether to include it in his or make it separate, but I think we really need to position ourselves for the future with regard to people, especially as Jim said, but also equipment and facilities.
Can you say more what you mean by that?
Well, we should be planning now for 20 to 40 years out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it.
I'm not suggesting we're not doing that, but I think that's what the focus should be.
Great. Okay. Anything else from any of the board members? Chief Schapelhuman, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, just a couple things, actually just clarification on it a little bit. So accreditation is more of a process than it is a plan. There's a strategic plan as part of accreditation, but you know, once either we get it or we don't, but once we're in the process, it's the process that makes you better. And then you have to maintain that. So there needs to be some correlation in what you wrote to more of the ongoing process and quite honestly, the maintenance of that annually as well. And then I think, you know, people covered this, but the board members covered it, but, you know, succession and how you feather that into, you know, especially for senior staff, I'm always sensitive to. And the last one, Jim mentioned, you know, we're looking at trying to look ahead, and Chuck brought that up as well. But don't forget technology and other innovations that are going to make us better. So it's not just your standard facility fleet. It's the tools or the things that you don't have that make you better. That's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, great. So some themes here, right, are coming out. There's leadership and employee relations and being a choice employer. There's community awareness and education and helping support community preparedness. There's relationships with your partners and the people that you serve and the communities that you serve. Maintaining that confidence level, fiscal responsibility, good leadership on the board, really good relationships on the board, honoring the meeting agreements, financial health, emergency response times, so effectiveness in the work that you do. Any comments about themes that you notice or additional comments before we move into looking at the strategic plan goals and thinking about priorities for the year ahead?
Can I just add on to what the chief said about innovation?
Mm-hmm.
I really think that's important. And I think that our constituents kind of, you know, expect that from us, given where we're located.
Yes.
And innovation doesn't necessarily only have to mean technology. You know, I mean, there are different things in how we deal with fiscal responsibility or community preparedness. I mean, there are lots of opportunities, as Robert said, to be creative, and innovation and creativity, I think, is what we're known for as a fire district.
Mm-hmm.
On such a broad, in the broadest sense of the word. When I just didn't put in technology and innovation, and that's what I think is important as well.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Any other comments before we move ahead?
Yeah, I want to add something onto that. And I'm not disagreeing with what Virginia said. I agree with it, actually. But I think there's another side to this that I'm not arguing for, but I think it's part of what we do, and maybe we need to acknowledge it. But there's also the part of tradition and the way things have always been and how important that is. And again, I'm not advocating for this. I'm just sort of stating a fact. So we know from research and so forth that's out there that red is the worst color for fire engines that you could have. You can't see them at night and so forth. But we keep red fire engines because they've always been red. And I'm wondering if we should somehow acknowledge at least that there's a tradition in some of this work that we have to bow to in some way.
Okay. Great.
One other thing, Belinda, I think maybe I did, my tongue was tied when I first started talking, and my mind was racing before I can get it out. Somewhere along the line, there's I'm hoping that, and I'm not, I don't think that we are in an absolute sense, but somewhere I think there may be somewhat of a reason to either reconnect in ways that are support where each of our communities, and I'm talking about the cities and the counties, are when it comes to disaster preparedness. I think that some people have some knowledge of what that may look like, but I think that the vast majority of what and I'm only speaking for my, where I live, is that I think that we really need to figure out that build that community, build those leaders in the community around CERT, and provide whatever, help them to build it and to provide that level of awareness, whether it's through education, it's through programs, new innovative programs or traditional programs. I think we need to, I don't know, yeah, I could be speaking out of pocket here, but I think either we have to reconnect or connect with the community and figuring out how to do that in an appropriate way for the district that makes sense. Yeah, so I'll just leave it.
So connecting with the community and serving, like particularly the community education role and community preparedness role, and particularly building leadership in the community for preparedness.
Yeah, because the leadership is so important, I think. In the absence of, like, I think where we're battling with, not battling, there's a disconnect with leadership within those cities or counties at the elected official piece of it. How can we help undergird the people that are in the community who are working and volunteering this sort to help lift them up so that they can then become a viable voice for their own community. Because sometimes we come in as the cavalry with these entities, and they're not having it. They feel a sense of threat maybe to some extent, but standoffish. So I think that working with those community groups, trying to build them up, lift them up, so that they can be the voice of their community. Because sometimes, in the community, people can get things more done than for us to come in from the outside to try to make it happen.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay. So let's keep all of this in mind as we move along. We'll certainly make this, you'll get a copy of this, but as we start thinking about priorities for the year, let's think about, what priorities will help achieve these elements of the vision and hopes that you have. So we'll hear from Chief Navarro just for a few minutes, just to kind of give a brief overview. And I know you're familiar, but just to give us a little orientation to this crosswalk that he developed, and also just kind of maybe refresh us on the strategic plan goals. Chief Navarro, do you want to just kind of give us an overview of this for a couple minutes?
Certainly, Melinda. Thank you very much. Board, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just take you back just a few, actually months or years. When we started this strategic plan, we were guided by principles that are indicated in the literature that we have from the accreditation board. And in order to do that, when you talk about strategic planning, talk about providing short-term direction, but also building a shared vision, setting goals and objectives, and optimizing the use of resources. So it's a planning document basically going forward. Understand that much of what we do is just daily things that we have to do to basically do the work that we do. Payroll has to pay payroll. We have to go out and inspect our buildings. We have to go out and take a look at our equipment. We have to train. Those are just daily duties. When we talk about strategic planning, we're talking about envisioning a near future, and then setting in that near future, basically those kinds of things that we need to accomplish to make that vision come true. When we started this, we ended up with 9 strategic goals. Many of those goals were pulled out of a SWOT analysis we did with employees, but also we listened carefully to what the board was discussing ongoing. And this was previous boards and some of the board members that are there now. So we included in those strategic statements a lot of what we were hearing. And then basically on each one of those strategic statements, we've developed any number of objectives to basically get us to that strategic goal. I like to use the football analogy because it's the easiest one. I want to win the Super Bowl. Well, how do you do that? Do we have to build up defenses? Do we have to get a quarterback? Do we have to get a tight end? What do we have to do? What are the specific objectives to move us in that direction? What I'm hearing from the board many times is priorities, things that they want to get accomplished. In my estimation, and the reason why I put the crosswalk in there is I took your original priorities on that right-hand column, and on the left-hand column are the actual strategic statements in our plan. So for example, 1.0 was support and provide community education programs, preparing community members with the ability to mitigate impact to life and property from the effects of man-made and natural emergencies. Much of the discussion today was about that. And what you guys had as a priority was organize and support community resources. And I heard again tonight, fairly substantial support for CERT and for community preparedness and those kinds of issues. Underneath that strategic goal of 1.0, staff can put together a number of objectives that align themselves with the priorities that the board has right now. My proposition basically is that when staff does the hard work in doing that, we will go back to the Emergency Preparedness Committee, lay it out for them, get their input, and then we can start tasking this thing out. If you take a look at 7.0, consistent with the district's vision, remain current and implement advanced technologies, compile and analyze data to enhance service delivery and utilize to make analytical driven decisions. I've been doing that for the last 3 years. We've had contractors working on the data and the analysis. We've gone forward through two different individual contracts. We have some very innovative things coming forward with First Watch. And again, we can do is lay that out for you, show you what our deliverables are and what they look like. And quite frankly, go to that strategic planning committee and lay that out on a regular basis, get the input and go down the road. The bottom line to this, and I think this is what I'd like to emphasize, is that the way that the board is envisioning our future is important for us to understand what that means. Staff needs to take that, do the research, provide back to you, what best practices are out there and what we found in our research, what we think we can do to implement that, bring that to our standing committees, and our standing committees then can work with staff to make that happen. And then we can report back as to our progress. How the committee reports to the full board is up to that, if they want staff to come forward, or they can do it themselves. So basically what I've talked to Belinda about is that we integrate the current strategic plan. If we need to make some modifications to the 9 strategies, we can. I think we've pretty much covered everything. Where really the actionable items will be on that right-hand side, the board priorities, and we'll fold those into the existing plan right now. This is extremely consistent with what we're being told in terms of accreditation also. They put out a strategic plan is a living document and actually ask us or demand that we, on an annual basis, review, evaluate, discuss, and make that current. It's supposed to be a living document. We just finished the chief's annual meeting. In that meeting, he had a number of goals and things that he wanted to get accomplished. I broke those all out by specific individuals that will be tasked to do that. And I basically indicated which strategic initiative that came under, have them go back to our deliverables and take a look at that and see how it fits in and update the plan. So my suggestion, succinctly as I can possibly make it for you, is whatever you envision as priorities, we will fold that into the strategic plan. We'll put it under one of those strategic initiatives. If we have to change them, we will, but I think we pretty much can fold them in there. The objectives themselves, the actionable items, will be reported back to the board. When that report comes back, it will tell you what the objective is. It'll give you in objective terms what is going to be brought back to you. It'll tell you who's been assigned to that, and it'll give you a timeline on when we anticipate it will be completed. So that it's quantifiable and it's objective. That's the way the plan should be. So Belinda, I think that summarizes it. I've got some things on my board I can actually bring up and show them what that might look like, but I think that's good enough. More than happy to open it to any discussions.
Questions or comments for what Chief Navarro presented?
No, Chief Navarro, I know you met with the Strategic Planning Committee last week. Did you discuss a schedule for achieving the accreditation process?
Yeah. What I suggest we do is, and we've already made this, we've had this conversation with the chief, is we are going to be giving the committees right now quarterly reports. So our first one will be done that first meeting for the committee in April. The model that we basically, what I talked to the staff about, is we have a great model on the finance side. Finance does regular reports to the finance committee. The finance committee goes through those reports. It goes to the board, and literally we've got all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted. What I'm suggesting is that HR committee will receive reports based on HR issues and training issues, succession planning, and what have you. Emergency preparedness will get our Office of Emergency Management on our community education programs. That'll be reported back to that committee. Strategic Planning Committee will get strategic plan initiatives and those things that are articulated in that, and accreditation updates. So basically, we're forming a road path going forward on how we're going to provide reports, how they be evaluated, what the input might be. Literally, we'll have a management process that'll be there. That's what's been suggested so far.
Thank you.
Director Bernstein?
You're muted, Chuck.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think we need to be a little bit cautious, and I'm suggesting to Manny that the board priorities, for the most part, this matchup, this alignment, I think is helpful. But I think there are two pitfalls to it. First of all, what the board wants to accomplish are not necessarily strategic things. So I
Right.
don't think we have to put everything into the strategic plan. And let me tell you the danger there. The danger there is, for example, in the middle, we have this undertake succession planning, for example. We originally put that on there because we knew we were going to need to replace the chief and we wanted to start that process. And so it was very specific. And then in the write-up of it, it got generalized and it got put into the strategic plan. Now, there's nothing wrong with succession planning, but that's not what the board said originally. It was a very focused kind of thing. And the finding a successor to the chief is not something that the rest of the staff has to be involved in, at least not immediately. So that's one danger. The other danger is, and I don't even know what this means anymore. If we look at the first one on your list, the very one at the top, I think that the strategic plan talks about community education programs. That's very good. And yet the board priority has been kind of generalized down to the point where I don't know what we even meant by it anymore. It says organize and support community resources. And I'm saying, what did we mean by that? What were we going to do? How were we going to know if we accomplished that? Because I don't know which resources. I don't know if it was CERT. I don't know what it was anymore. So we've sort of lost track of that. So how should I say? I'd like to be able to have the board priorities. The board should be mindful of the strategic goals, but they may want to do things that are not necessarily strategic, and we shouldn't try too hard to make it fit by watering it down or generalizing it or something of that sort.
Okay, so we can keep that in mind. If there's something that doesn't fit at all, we can put it in its own category and we can try to be specific.
Let me ask you, Belinda, the first one, do you remember what community resources meant when we put that down there?
We can pull that up.
Can
I just, let me just
Jump.
respond just for a minute. It's an important point. I agree with Director Bernstein, is that we always have this ongoing discussion. Is it strategic or is it just a goal, an initial thing that we have to do right away? And that becomes a good topic for discussion. And you're quite right. Long-term strategic succession planning should be something that's strategic, but do we have an immediate need for something to get done? That's great. And I get that. And quite frankly, that's why we should have a regular reporting to those committees to get that input back and be able to get that as actionable. We can pull one out and stick the other part in, those pieces that come in there. I have the same ongoing discussion with much of our staff, what is strategic and what is not strategic. We're going to do community education every day. Well, what's a long-term vision? Do we have to build something different? Do we have to look at it differently? And that's the kind of discussion that's ongoing with staff. The other thing I would make a point to is that irrespective of what the board wants us to do, we're the ones who are going to do it. And so we have to have that engagement with the staff that's the actionable persons involved in it, meeting back and forth with you. I think a great example today was the first presentation with our HR manager. Literally a back and forth on what the intent, what do you want to have happen, and she'll put it together for you. That's the kind of good relationship that you should be having with our staff members. And quite frankly, I agree with you, Mr. Bertzi. Really, that is really the touching point. What's strategic? What's something we got to get done tomorrow? Thank you.
Okay. This is the details from that meeting we had a year ago.
Belinda, I think Robert Jones had some comments.
It just a general comment. I think part of, and it's no reflection on Chuck and his thoughts in terms of why asking the question of what is it. I think part of what it was my understanding that each of the once the certain areas get assigned to part of our committees, that the committees then would help flush a lot of that out and in conjunction and coordination with Manny and bring that back whatever it felt like it had flushed out, bringing that back to the board, because words in itself can give a point in a direction, but what else get added to it, I think needs to get flushed out. And that's where the committee work, I think, is so important to help materialize that. That's it.
Are there any other comments?
Jim?
Yeah, Rob,
Yeah, Manny, when you had met with myself and Chuck, you had mentioned that there's going to be a time when there's going to be board participation in this.
Yeah, what Director Salam was referring to is when we talked about the timeline for accreditation, there's two interactions that are going to take place when a peer review and evaluation team comes on site. And right now it's kind of up in the air because of the COVID stuff. Some of them may be done virtually, but many of the performance indicators talk about relationships between staff and the board, you know, the input from the board, lots of different, there's 252 of these. So I will have to really spend some time with board members to go over those things that I think might be questions that will be asked of you by an evaluation team. In many cases, you'll be able to understand, for example, our financial management that we have in there, you're very familiar with it. You're very familiar with the audits. You're very familiar with CAFRs and the other kinds of things. Some of the other issues that are part of that are, you know, how do we approve a facility when contracts come through, all those things. It's just kind of teeing that up for board members when the evaluation team comes here. The other part of that is that when we go before the Commission for Accreditation, it is required that not only the staff goes there, but somebody representing the board, and Director McLaughlin will probably be you if it happens this year, because it'll be the president of the board, and also a labor rep. Normally it's going to be the president of the local. So those two individuals will be at the commission meeting, and I've gone through enough of those already. They are giving direct questions to those individuals. And so, yeah, the involvement basically is going to be at some point, I'm going to roll this thing out, probably do a briefing for board members to get them ready for the site review. And then secondly, before we go before the commission, we'll make sure that that team is prepped up too.
Great.
Thank you, Manny.
Okay. So this is everyone seeing this screen here, which is that same crosswalk?
Mhm.
Is that a yes? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is like a whiteboard that we'll use to update this crosswalk, and we can add things that don't fit in this grid on the side. And then what we'll do is you'll each get to choose 3 top priorities, and as a way of filling out where the group's top priorities are collectively. So just to start the discussion, you know, what are there any items here that are no longer stand out, or new items that are not on this red list here that you want to add, that you would want to add for 2021? Oops.
So are these things to add or things to add or subtract?
Let's start with add. What might you add?
Well, Belinda
Yes.
or Jim, Jim, are we going to filter it through you, or?
no, Belinda has got the reins here.
You've got the, okay, all right. That 2.0, it's nice to have it up there, you know, National Fire Prevention Association, 1500, 1582, 1710 guidelines. I mean, Manny, can you give us a brief, what are those?
That was part of the SWAT stuff that came back from actually the firefighters, and as guiding documents in terms of benchmarks. you know, do we visit those things when we put together? And 1710 basically is it's minimum staffing. It's also our response times. It's also how you look at those things. So that's part of that.
So as a board priority, we'd want to be there, right?
Right now, the benchmarks for the board are first response for all code threes. For total response time is 7 minutes. And then the aggregate times for that are their dispatch times, our turnout times, our travel times, and then the total at the very end. What we're probably going to be doing internally because of accreditation, because it's best practice, we're going to start benchmarking lots of other things too. For example, if we have a water rescue on the bay, how long does it take us to put a boat in the water? I mean, there's some simple questions that are asked by our constituency when they have a problem. How quick do you get there, and what do you do once you get there? And we're going to be doing that. The benchmarks for our EMS system, First Watch has a number of triggers that they use for us to do our totally quality insurance, and we'll be pulling all that data. We have been doing it for a while, so we take a look, for example, at a cardiac situation. We will take a look at the PCR and find out how the patient presented. Did we follow protocol? What did we do? And there's some pretty critical issues. Those are benchmarks we'll probably do internally. I don't know if they'll get a board resolution, but we are fast approaching taking a look at benchmarks and evaluation and all those things. Some of those are just guiding documents for that.
Yep.
That's what.
Yep. So, Jim, may I continue, Jim?
Again, it's Belinda's show here.
Belinda, may I can ask me?
Yeah, of course.
So then, Manny, as we spoke at the strategic planning committee meeting, when we're looking at 2.0, 4.0, and 9.0, those are kind of state of mind, affective type goals and objectives that we definitely want as a fire board, because we want to support those affective and cognitive skills that the district is doing through their accreditation process, correct?
Well, some of them are core competencies that we have to do. I'm in the process of calling those out. If we don't have them, we just can't get accredited. A lot of them are just best practices.
Okay.
And what accreditation would like you to do is put things into place as improvement going down. Doesn't mean we have to do them. It means that we acknowledge that that's out there, and it's 9.0 basically is the risk assessment analysis that you perform. We've also done a risk analysis by planning zone. It's very elaborate, but this is why we need to have quarterly reports back to committees, just to bring you up to speed on how that stuff is working.
So I think you've done a great job here of pretty much with your current district strategic plan and our board priorities. We can flip-flop this back and forth here. I mean, when we're talking about like 4.0, I mean, yeah, as a board, we want to be there. I mean, in fact, all these, from 1.0 all the way to 9.0. So I'm trying to, I get it, okay, because I've dealt with these before in another, organization, but we're there. I can see that, we're paralleling what you have outlined here, Chief, and our board priorities. Well, when you're looking through 1.0 to 9.0, yeah, we want that to happen like all the time. we don't want to say it only happens once in a while. I mean, we want the organization to go forward with that all the time. So that's why I'm a little bit, I mean, we could write something to protect and serve and save life and property. I mean, that would be a generalized goal and objective for our district. But what you've done here is you've broken it down 1.0 to 9.0. And us as a fire board have supported pretty much whatever you've addressed, have addressed here. So Belinda, can you help me a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think
I
you
see-
are helping. I think you're
I see a
helping.
lot of,
Yeah,
good stuff here, okay?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of our interweaving here between our board priorities and the district plan here, strategic district plan. In fact, Manny, we're in compliance pretty much with everything between 1.0 and 9.0, right?
Actually, what I'm trying to do is facilitate if Belinda can get from the board what you've designated as priorities, and staff will take those and work those around. And to Director Bernstein's position, some of those I think will fit into the strategic plan very easily. We'll bring that information back on how we will detail that in terms of objectives, specific deliverables, who's assigned, and timelines. Others that are not necessarily strategic, we can follow the same format. We just say, here's who's assigned, here's a timeline, this is how we're going to get it done, those kinds of things. Because what is strategic is much different than just something that's very actionable and get done right away. I'm looking right now at the 1.0, and there are 4 specific objectives in that particular criteria, actually 5. Conduct senior citizen community education programs. There's conduct K-3 children. Work collaboratively with local partner agencies to develop evacuation plans. Their support citizen preparedness efforts, including community emergency response teams, recruitment, equipment, and training. And then there's build resilient communities. Those are the objectives under that strategy, and how we flesh those out is all detailed already in the plan. Those will be brought back to the Emergency Preparedness Committee, have them take a good look at it. We can add to it, change it around. To Director Jones's point, include community members, absolutely. Those are things we can put down as specific objectives. How do we do that? And we certainly would rely on Mr. Jones because he's done it for years and years and years, right? So, but I would just encourage you to let Belinda finish what she needs to have happen with the priorities. We'll flesh this out between the two of us and get it back to you.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful comments. I think, part of what I'm hearing from you, and we want to hear from, I see Director Bernstein's hand up, and I want to hear from everyone. But I think maybe part of what I'm hearing from you, Director Solano, is these are very aligned. Why do we even need that second column? Maybe you just adopt your vision and the strategic plan goals, and that's what you track. And I think that would be a perfectly reasonable approach, and one that you might choose to take. You could just take the vision that you all articulated earlier and those elements and the 1.0 through 9.0, and those are your priorities for the year. You might also, alternatively want to choose some things to highlight that the board is particularly focused on, which might be that list on the right. So I hope that's helpful. And let's hear from Director Bernstein and others.
I have an addition I would like to make, and I would also then have a suggestion. Actually, I have 2 suggestions. The addition that I'd like to see would, if you had to align it, would be for point 5, the maintain financial stability. I would like to see the district add a finance function, a financial analysis function to its management. I think we need somebody who has the analytical skills, both financial, but not necessarily only financial, to be able to analyze purchases, contracts, um, you know, MOUs, all of that. So that I would like to see us add a finance function. And if you had to categorize it, I would put it under 5.
Okay, thank you. And then you
Chuck,
had,
is that separate from what the staff is doing?
It's in addition to what the staff is doing.
So you're saying that the staff is not doing this now?
I think we need somebody, I think in most organizations, accounting is different than finance. And and the financial analysis, I think we don't have anybody who does that specifically. And the other, I have just a thought that if you go down to that box that aligns with 7, but on the right-hand side, that perhaps that first item, perform data analysis of performance and improve response time, ought to be up in the second box if response times are dealt with up there. It's not a big deal, but it was just the thought. Manny said that that NFPA things dealt with response times and so forth. So it's just finding perhaps a better home. And the second suggestion I have is in that same box for 7.0, the last one, just grammatically, I think it would be better if it said, encourage the use of technology.
okay, great, thank you. Let's hear from other board members.
You know, I know we've been talking about additions, but you know, one subtraction I would like to make is that it's bothered me since it went on there, that strengthen employee relations. I think that'd be easily misinterpreted. My recollection was it didn't get any votes because it wasn't seen as an issue or a problem. I would like to see that come off. You know, I think you know, the board's emphasis and focus is you know, what I'm trying to say is I think that's more the domain of the chief than it is the board. So that's one I would like to see. I would like to see come up. And it's not that we don't care about it. It's not important to us. It's that it's not really our domain.
Great, thank you. Director, Chief Navarro, do you have your hand up?
Taking notes. I'm
Okay, that's fine.
at the will of the directors, and quite frankly, I'm enjoying this because we're now digging into it and seeing how it fits or doesn't fit. And that's exactly the conversation I wanted to have.
Thank you. Directors Jones or Corrali, your comments?
No, I think the areas to the work on the right is what is going to be needed. I don't know how. I guess the board. It seems to me. It appears to me that the board. There's X amount of energy that the board overall have as a board, and I think trying to prioritize. There are committees that which is a subset of the larger board that is engaged into trying to fleshing out, developing the activities that goes into the board priorities in terms of trying to understand it a little bit more, and so they can get back to the board. I think overall as a board, there are certain things that will take, you know, a hard decision about taking precedence over other decisions. For example, I'm just going to throw it out as an example. Is it, since we're in this mode now of do we look at do we look at long-term capital plan as a primary priority, or do we look at succession planning and that whole activity? if we had to have our meetings about something, where should we spend our time equally on both of those items, or should we spend time fleshing out or looking at, you know, the priority that we would have in those two areas? Or do we pick and choose, hey, let's just try to work on this to get this to a certain point so that we can feel comfortable with it as a board, and then move into another part, another area? Or do we do the heavy lifting of trying to move that elephant, all these areas, all together, all at once as a board? And that gets back to how well the committees that we have, where these areas lie, will fall, and what those committees' role will be into pushing the ball, kicking the can down the road a little further. But overall, as a board, I think there is that overarching thing that is important. In June, we're going to have to either be in a better position we are right now in terms of where we are with our staffing, because there will be a major twist that take place. And so we need, I think, to be in a good position to be able to kind of make sure the transition is there and in place. So how much is that going to take our time overall as a board? I think it's going to take a lot. Whether how much it get referred to the committee, I don't know. So somewhere along the line, I think this is where we're trying to get to is I see all this body of work as necessary, and a lot of it can get done in the committee. But I think as a board focus for the year in terms of what's precedence, I think is going to be important. Is it more important for the board to focus on organizing as a priority with item number 1.0 versus succession planning or completing that task? Both are important, but how the board want to spend its board meeting time tackling these issues, and as well as translate to staff too, because staff is going to be engaged in it. Same staff may be engaged in one or more of these activities. So how do we split up their time? So that's what we need. I think we need to get to.
Great. Yes, and we will get to prioritizing. There've been a couple comments about the succession planning. Do we want to make that more specific to hiring for the chief position rather than the broad?
I think it's bigger than that.
It's bigger than just that one position.
I mean, it's almost like succession planning is planning for the future.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. So, but I do want to give my input if it's my
Excellent.
turn.
Yes.
So I think that having 9 things is a lot.
Mhm.
And I think that we can probably kind of integrate some of the points, unless there's something significantly different, like for example, with points 1.0 and 8.0. And it seems to me that the end result is probably going to be similar or should be similar, unless you want to make 8.0 a communications piece as a way to communicate with the public. But it doesn't seem like that's the case vis-a-vis 1.0 because of public education. And, you've got community education programs at 1.0, right? But then at the same time, you have relevant public information, disseminate district core values. I mean, does that fit in 1.0? I mean, what's the difference?
If I can answer that really quickly, is that there's 2 objectives that we've got right now under 8.0. One is utilize social media to keep members and public informed.
Right. So that's communications more. To me, that is more communications oriented rather than public and community education, even though that would fall under that category of communications. But I almost think that the overriding or the umbrella for 8.0 would be communications. But I don't know, is there a reason that it's not called that here?
Well,
Or is that not, or am I misunderstanding the purpose of number 8.0?
No, I think this is this is the conversation that needs to take place with those committees and with the staff that are working on this. Because the way this was envisioned originally is one really is programs down the road. For example, we've got, to mention one of the issues I think Director Bernstein brought up is that how can we mitigate or prevent before something actually happens? And we have a Remember When program. And that Remember When program is targeted specifically for, well, I'll be frank with you, citizens my age, right, that might fall down on a loose rug. And so that those community education and preventative things are much different than what we envisioned with number 8, which really was just having a platform for information so people are aware of what's going on with the district. Easily we can put them together. But again,
but they may not need to go together, Manny. That's what I'm saying. Number 8 could be under an umbrella, a broad description of communications.
Yes, we can bring these back to committees.
But we don't have, where would communications go? We don't have a communications committee.
We would probably have that in emergency preparedness committee.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense, right? If that's what, but then there's external communication and internal communication, which would then go for me, like for, I don't even know, maybe number 6.0 wouldn't necessarily be the only appropriate place, but I'm looking at, I think I was the one who said strengthen employee relations. And what I meant by that is, Chuck brought up a good point. What I meant by that was, if we're going to ask or want our staff to do, for example, financial analysis, I mean, why can't we invest in the people that we have, whom we've hired and depend on information from and work from, and allow them to, as number 8 says, mentor future leaders and have personnel development as a learning organization, so that we're not constantly being in a situation where we have these expectations, and then that we think that the staff isn't meeting the expectations, and there might be some tension between staff and through these committee meetings and board members, so that's where strengthening employee relations, that's where I see that could be a possible a possible descriptor of number 6.0. Do we?
That's a wonderful conversation to have.
Yeah.
With our committee and flesh that out, because that's, I mean,
right. But so Jim wanted to remove strengthen employee relations, but if we viewed it in that way, I mean, it doesn't have to be the words that strengthen employee relations don't necessarily have to be used, but maybe, I don't know, how do we deal with what Chuck said in 5.0, add a financial analysis function to its management?
Some of the things that you said in your visioning had to do with an effective leadership team, supporting an effective
support, exactly, and supporting our personnel. Which means to me, if we want someone to do more financial analysis, do we have the people right now who can do that, but they're just not trained in a way that, that in a way that meets our needs as a board? And do we invest in them? I mean, I don't know. I mean, these are the things that I'm throwing out there, but I wanted to clarify. I think I was the one who put strengthen employee relations. Which seems very broad. So
are you suggesting to change it to supporting employee or supporting leadership or something?
Well, I mean, I don't know, because they're kind of mixed in with Chuck's part of add a financial analysis function to its management. To whose management? The finance in administration or the fire district's management?
Once again.
I know, I'm sorry, Manny. It's just.
No, they're wonderful conversations. And like I said, that's what has to happen with staff. And I'll be honest with you, is that for me, I always had a count. In my old life, it was 5, and here it's 3. So when you got 3 of you all say, hey, this is what I want you to do, I got my marching orders. I'm a good soldier, and that's the road we go. In the meantime, I will facilitate as much as possible. And I can help you, and staff can help you with a wealth of information. You heard a lot of that today. I think your discussion with Francine was a great discussion. You realize having a real professional in that position is what they can do for you. But ultimately, the board has to, decide exactly how they want to do that.
So
Okay.
an option, and then I know Chuck.
But what I'm saying is 8.0, maybe that's communications.
Okay, so in the board priorities column, we call that communications.
Well, or I mean, it's a suggestion, but that
Yep.
seems like that's a differentiation between 8 and 1.
Okay, good. Thank you. So what we could do right now to kind of further test the pulse and see where things are at is each get 3 votes to choose your top, what you think are the top 3 in this 2021 board priorities. And then we could see where things fall. Are you all over the place and everyone's, agrees with all of them? Or are there 2 or 3 things that 90% of your votes go towards? We can kind of see where things land. Does that seem helpful at this moment, or does someone have a different question?
I have one quick comment. So under 5.0, where Chuck add a financial analysis function to its management. I mean, why couldn't that go under 6.0? Chuck?
Because it doesn't relate directly to finance. 6.0, it's already covered under 6.0. If you look at personnel development and mentorship of future people, your point is already covered by something else. But a finance function is like an accounting function, like an HR function.
No, I understand that, but couldn't we use what we, have the people that have them work to develop that function?
I wasn't specifying how we did it. I just felt we needed a box in our organization chart that deals with financial analysis.
You can put it in both.
Okay, I would put it in both.
Okay.
then.
So we'll add that as well in under supporting leaders.
Yeah, I mean, the point
Personnel
here is we really should be talking about the right-hand side here. Manny's thing on the left is 256 things. We shouldn't even touch that.
Yeah, I understand that, Chuck, but we're adding what our board priorities are based on the left-hand side.
No,
And so the left-hand side to me is kind of, I don't want to say confusing. It's not confusing, but it can be it can be clearer based on what our board priorities might be.
Okay, so
which would help Manny.
If it works for you, President McLaughlin, what we'll do is we'll take the poll and have everyone choose 3. I know Director Bernstein, you had a comment.
I just made it.
Okay.
On the right-hand side.
Got it. President McLaughlin, what do you think?
I think now would be a good time to do that.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so
Can you put, last time we sometimes could put 2 in one space if that was a high priority.
I think let's do 3. Each choose your 3 top priorities.
Okay.
Let's hear from each of you about what your 3 top ones are. So we will move the dots and you will tell us which ones. So let's start with President McLaughlin. Where should we put your 3 dots?
You're going to need to give us a minute here.
Yeah, we'll give you a minute.
Yeah, let me take just a moment here.
Yes, very good.
I can do mine.
Great.
Because I may have to, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to pop off about 2 minutes before 6 because I have it's just, I just got overbooked for tonight.
No problem.
And the other meeting is I'm on a critical path on that one. So I can give you mine. So the first one is, for me, is number 1.0. The second one is 3.0, and the third one is 6.0.
So can you tell us which item under the board priorities? So we've got organize and support community resources, develop housing policies, and then which one under 6.0?
6.0, we got we need to tackle all of them. So understanding succession planning and support.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Okay, who's ready next?
I'm ready.
I'm sorry that may have to pop up.
No problem. We'll try to,
unavoidable.
sorry to go a little over.
No. You don't time target.
Oh, they were next. Was that Director Burns? Who was that?
No, I'm ready.
That was you. Okay, President McLaughlin.
My first one would be undertake succession planning.
Mhm.
Number 2 would be the perform data analysis. And 3, improve community outreach and communications.
Great, thank you. Who's next? Director Corrali, you ready? Or Director Solano?
Okay, well, I've got to say 1 through 9 they're all important to me, okay? For us to choose 3, I think it shows a little bit of a misjustice on it, but you definitely need number 2, 2.0, because that's your basics according to what Manny has told us. That's why there's a fire agency. And under National Fire Prevention Association guidelines, we need that in there. So that's kind of baseline. Okay, now we've got 1.0, which is support and provide community education programs. I mean, that's another part of the operational function of a fire agency or a public safety agency. So 2 and 1 for sure. And you could take my little, whatever my color is, and you can put all the rest of them down the column. But I would say 1 and 2 for the time being would be my 2 top priorities, and all the rest fall into some type of a subsection.
Okay.
All right. It's not like, this isn't like an educational or any other type of an organizational situation. This is a life and death safety organization. And the way Manny has done through the accreditation process, he's done a great job here identifying, 1 through 9. And he pretty much buttonholes everything here that we need to do. So that's why 1 and 2 and the rest need small little, my little color on them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll go.
Great.
So I'm adding my 3 dots in these particular spaces because I'm going to assume that we're going to continue to maintain our financial health. And I'm going to assume that we're going to continue using, or we're going to be using NFPA standards, right? That doesn't mean that those are not important to me. But if I were to, if those assumptions are going to be made on my part, I do think number 6 is important, which is to support mentorship of future leaders and personnel development as a learning organization. I think number 8 is important.
Which one under number 8? There you've got.
Yeah, which is basically the communications.
Communications, yeah.
I think we have a great story to tell and it needs to be told. And I think there are ways to tell not only our story, but to, kind of be more proactive in, keeping people informed of what's going on, which I think we've been doing in light of the pandemic and the wildfires. And I think number 1 is important. I think it's important because we're deficient a little bit there and can improve. But that's not at the expense of number 2 and number 5, which I assume I'm going to be making the assumption that those are there.
2 and 5 or 2 and 6?
2 and 5. 2 and I say 5, Robert, because we're always going to be watching the finances, right? So I think that's always going to be a priority. It's an assumption for me that we're going to maintain good financial health and stability. number 6 is something where I think that we can improve on. I guess my priorities are, what can we improve on in 2021?
So maybe I'm still confused. I thought you said 1, 6, and 8.
8. Yes.
Okay.
Right. So normally, yeah, because I mean, normally, given my philosophy, Robert, that, that an elected body is, has a major fiduciary duty. In fact, the most important duty to ensure that our tax dollars are being spent wisely and our
Yeah, I
financial
understand.
health. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's going to, so I guess the question for me, instead of, what do you want to make of, what do you want to make, what do you want these priorities to be? I think these are the priorities for me for 2021 because they need the most improvement.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Bernstein.
Yes, I'll put my first vote under, it's been moved up to the 2 now, the data analysis at response time.
Mhm.
I also want to put one under the finance function. Is it in 2 places now? Under 5.
Add financial analysis function.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then the third one is oh, I'm sorry. Yes, under 5, create long-term financial plan, long-term capital plan.
Okay. Great. Okay. So what I see here is 3 of these have 3 votes, which is the highest number. So the organize and support community resources, so that community education programming, the NFPA guidelines and efforts to provide health. So 2.0, perform data analysis of performance, 3 votes. That was important last time as well. And then this third one here, 6.0, succession planning and supporting future leaders. Those have at least 3. So I know we're at 6 o'clock. Does anyone, any insights that you glean from this, motions that you would want to make at this point? Should we have a little discussion?
Well, I'd say one of the things I was hoping to accomplish this evening was to endorse, these board priorities, so that Chief Navarro and the rest of the staff, have clarity, certainty on just what our priorities are. So, and I think it's pretty consistent with what was done, last year. And again, I would like to see us formally adopt, these as, board priorities.
So you could adopt this whole list with these 3, highest priorities as an example.
Right. I think, I think Virginia and I, viewed that strengthened employee relations a little differently. I saw it more from a contract administration standpoint than treating, staff with, courtesy and respect. And so I think we, both had kind of a slightly different spin on just the meaning of that item, but otherwise I didn't hear any real move to eliminate, or I didn't hear anybody say that they didn't think it was relevant or valuable, any of the items in that right column.
Are you saying, Jim, just adopt all of these with the focus on these top 3?
Yes.
Yeah, I would go for that too. Like I said, for me, number 5, I mean, maintain, all of that. I think we're doing some of those things already. like review and revise fiscal reserve policies. We're looking at those things.
Director Jones, I see you have a comment.
Oh, let
Yeah,
me get off
just-
my soapbox.
Just briefly,
It's great.
yeah, just dial in what channel you're on, Virginia, that's all. We all look at that one. But part of what I was saying is that I want to say that for me, I think this is a good process, and I think what Jim mentioned in terms of these are the board priorities, or the things that the board said it wants to kind of focus on, how they shape up in terms of which one would actually the vote is in, the red arrow saying, hey, these float to the top of everything else. We still need to deal with and work on those things, but those kind of float up. Our meeting should be consuming somewhere around that until we get a handle on it. But the next phase of this are, committee assignments. If there are community assignments versus just a overall board assignment. But I think, yeah, that's it. I'm off my soapbox too. Thank you. Sorry I have to leave, but I gotta go.
Bye, Robert.
Bye.
Do you need to
Hi,
call
Robert.
it? Do you want to call it? Do you need a quorum? Do you need Director Jones for a quorum if you want to make a motion?
No, I think my vote is if there's a vote to be taken, I'm with Jim. Whatever Jim say, I'm with Jim. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Hi, Robert.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, I think Jim's suggestion is a good one. I would go with that too.
Let's hear from Director Bernstein and Director Solano.
Well, it seems to me I would like, first of all, I think the board can do more than 3 things this year. So in one sense, I'd hate to lose track of some of these other things that are here. And I concur with Jim that one about strengthen employee relations, I think just sounded sort of ugly. I mean, why wouldn't we want to strengthen relations with the city of Atherton or Menlo Park? Or there's just a lot of people that it's almost a normal thing that you would want to strengthen relations. So I would like to see us get rid of that one, but then keep the other ones. I think we should indicate the votes just like we did. That'll show us the priorities. But I don't think we should. I think the committees can discuss these because we don't want to stop, for example, work on a capital plan. We need it for our budget. I mean, I understand why it wasn't people's priorities. And as Rob said, it's hard to pick 3 things here. So I would hate to see us lose these other things, except I'd like to see us lose the employee relations part.
I think the employee relations, I think we changed that to support employee relations, didn't we, Director Corrali? Yeah, so we'll change that.
Yeah.
But even then, as I said, I don't think that is meaningful. I mean, when we're successful, how will we know? It's just not a measurable kind of thing. I mean, it's just one of those things.
I think it's about how we treat as a board or the employees we actually work directly with.
Well, we're not supposed to work directly with employees.
Well, we do in the committees. Then that's the problem I'm having. So
I mean,
what?
if I could just say, I mean, for me, again, just to be clear, the term employee relations to me is kind of denotes a formal process. Again, more contract administration, promoting, employee relations, under the various contracts that are in place. I think perhaps, Virginia, if perhaps that is included in the mentorship of future leaders and personnel.
Yeah, I'm fine with taking it out because I do think it is covered under that top bullet.
Okay, so let's take it out then.
But I want the intention to be known that that's what I was thinking when that was there.
Sure.
Right. And I did that. And that's why I kind of changed it up a little bit, Jim, because I can see your point. You know what I'm saying? But I do think that, by supporting the employees, we're going to get good work from them. We get it now, but
Yep.
we can't have an antagonistic relationship.
Okay. So it sounds like it feels like that's incorporated in support mentorship of future leaders and personnel development. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that with me, Jim.
I would encourage us to either keep all the other ones or, and indicate the vote so we don't lose those priorities. And we,
I agree with you, Chuck. You know,
Okay.
it's, yeah, I agree.
Keep which other ones? All the other ones on the right? I thought we were gonna do that.
That's
Right.
what's on the table. Let's hear,
Right.
Dr. Solano, what do you think?
I think I've said enough.
Okay.
Really,
I think
I-
Rob wants to adjourn too.
Okay, so
I
let's,
just,
you want to make
you
a
know, I
motion?
already told you what I thought. I can't pick three. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll play the game here, but I can't pick three. I mean, you know, we're dealing
Rob,
with
I think
public
we're
safety.
doing what you want anyway.
I think we are essentially by keeping them all in place.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
it sounds like you want to adopt all of these 2021 board priorities and note the ones that had the most heat and interest.
Yeah, and I would say that in the committee discussions that we focus on those three.
Okay, so I suggest that you formally adopt them just for your own.
So I'll make a motion to formally adopt the 8 priorities for 2021 and with the focus on the top 3.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
Wait, there's
Virginia,
more
I
than-
think it's actually more than 8.
Yeah, there's
isn't it?
more than 8. It's 1, 2,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the numbers here. Sorry.
They're
Sorry.
9. Yeah, they're 9.
9, 10, 11, 12,
12, 13, with the 13. Oh, do we have to give a number or can we just say the board priorities, the 2021 board priorities? With the focus on the top 3 with the most votes, which are organize and support community resources, perform data analysis of performance and improve response time, and undertake succession planning and supporting mentorship of future leaders and personnel development as a learning organization.
I will second that. Any discussion? All right, Michelle, could you call the roll?
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Jones is absent. Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks for your help with all of this, Belinda.
My pleasure. Great work, everybody. In terms of next steps, you have that in your slide, but I will show you as well.
Oh, yeah.
So the board priorities will be assigned to committees like last time. Are you seeing the slide now?
Yes.
Excellent. Staff will, as Chief Navarro mentioned, the staff will integrate the board priorities into the strategic plan and will track them and staff will report to committees. And then the committees will report to the board at different meetings.
I would just like to reiterate, though, my caution that not all of these things should be integrated. And I think Chief Navarro understood that, and I appreciate where he's going.
Yeah. Some of them are more operational than strategic.
Yes.
Mhm.
And can I just thank Manny too for all the work that he's done on this. This has taken years, and Manny, it's a lot of work. So thank you.
Yeah, you know, this should have come together some time ago. We've got some thoughtful people on the committee that want some oversight, and you know, my whole presence has been that if you don't have information, you're going to fill the vacuum. You're going to fill it with questions or assumptions or whatever. You know, and one thing is, if your boss knows what's going on and you got to report it on up, you can always answer those questions. And to Director Bernstein's position, you're absolutely correct. There's some of those things that will just be like one-time shot project that has to get done, and we get that out. It's not really strategic, but it's been hanging out there for a while. Let's get it finished. Get it completed. So thank you so much. Tonight has been helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. And I want to echo Virginia's comments. You know, thank you, Belinda, for all your work as well.
My pleasure.
Good job, Manny.
All right, hand it back to you, President McLaughlin.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Hey, I'm not going to delay our departure here. You know, we almost hit the 3-hour mark. I think we did pretty well. You know, I want to thank Belinda for her cooperation in making that happen. So we have our board meeting next Tuesday, and I look forward to seeing you all then. So
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
I'm so moved.
Okay.
Night, everybody.
Michelle,
Thank you.
could you call the roll?
Did you want to do a second? I didn't hear a second.
I will second it.
Thank you very much. And Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Jones is absent. Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Bye.
night.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Harold.